1 2 chuffy chuffy 1 2 1 2 chuffy chuffy 1 2. Just going to close that door. And we'll do this. You like that? And I will check that the sound is rolling. You like that? Yeah. And I will check that the sound is rolling. You like? Yeah. Oh yeah. So here we are. I'm the Gravekeeper. I'm Ganji Kid. This is my stream. It's Ganji Kid. It's midnight. It's always midnight. It's actually 15:31 in the UK GMT. This is your. Is that your right ear? 1 2 check 1 2. This is your left ear. We're away. Oh, I've not got. That wasn't the cup of coffee. Don't worry. It wasn't the cup of anything. It's officially Ramadan. Officially, I'm not doing Ramadan this year because I'm reducing my metazapine dose, and to not eat all day would severely affect my mental health while I'm reducing my dose. So I am kind of doing Ramadan, kind of. I don't generally eat in the day anyway, but I've got a cup of coffee if I need to wet the whistle. We are online today talking some what the chuff it should be called, but we're talking some what the chuff. What's behind me? I'll get straight into it and I'll tell you what's going on. Today we're talking what the chuff. We're going to look at a really interesting. I've put the word conspiracy in the title, so I don't know if that's going to stop it from being suggested on YouTube, but I put the word conspiracy in the title because we're going to be looking at this really weird conspiracy, this really weird idea that well, it will get explained in this video, but the weird idea is something along the lines of we've only had 1,200 years since Jesus died, and we've lost like 800 years out of history, and there was some sort of reset in a mud flood. Trust me, the video is wild. We'll watch it in a minute. But first, what's this? What's this? I hear you cry, and I do hear you cry. I do hear you cry. That's Huggy Wuggy. Do you know who Huggy Wuggy is? Do you know Huggy Wuggy? Huggy Wuggy's in the news today. Huggy Wuggy's from something called Poppy Playtime, which is a game, like a horror game. It was on Steam. It's an animated thing there on YouTube, I think. I don't know. I'm not really au fait with Huggy Wuggy, but Huggy Wuggy's in the news today because parents. Now, bear in mind when you see Huggy Wuggy does not look that appealing to children, in my opinion, with the scary eyes and the teeth and the gangly arms, and looks a bit grotesque, doesn't it? Looks a bit grotesque. Looks a bit obviously horrific, right? Obviously horrific. But maybe I should have run the title of this video about Huggy Wuggy, because this is the thing that's going to be more viral today. But parents are concerned. I mean, maybe this will get me booted off YouTube as well, because YouTube won't want to suggest any Huggy Wuggy from now on, because parents have been showing. This is what they use. This careful and committed parent inadvertently allowed her children to watch Huggy Wuggy to the point where the 5-year-old climbed out the window. Is the rundown of the story. Apparently kids shouldn't be watching grotesque horror on the old internet. Apparently not. But Huggy Wuggy manages to evade the careful constraints of parental guidance because his name's Huggy Wuggy and he's a cartoon. And because it seems not all parents actually review the media before they let the children watch it. Some of them just take it for granted. In today's day and age. They just take it for granted in today's day and age that Huggy Wuggy is innocent. So, Huggy Wuggy is innocent. He's not the reason the children are watching this material. Huggy Wuggy is simply an animation. The reason the children are watching inappropriate material is a combination of the media that feeds it and the parents that place it in front of the children. Surely. I mean, there's a lot of dodgy media out there, isn't there, that children maybe shouldn't be watching. So you've got to be on that. Not this. Imagine that, though. Imagine you look at that and you think, oh, Huggy Wuggy, all right. That looks fine. Enjoy. He's got teeth and the manic eyes. Oh, I don't know. So, do you want to see something wild? Do you want to see something wild and comedic? You'll love this. This is comedic. I'm going to pop out the chat. Pop boom, so I can see it, but I don't need to put it on the screen because this is YouTube. So I don't know if YouTube saves chat for the video, I don't know, but it's YouTube, so I'm not going to pop it on the screen. If you want to write a comment or whatever in the comments, write it in the comments, it's up to you. Let's turn off the calm and relaxing game music, and let's get right. Right, now this is important though, this is important before I start this. This person, without the game music in the background or anything, this person, there's no place like home, has got a YouTube channel. They've got chuffing 40,000 subscribers. They've got more subscribers than me, mate. More subscribers than me. They don't just do Tartaria, which is the name of this conspiracy thing, but no one uses the word conspiracy these days because YouTube would be like, oh, it's a conspiracy video, I don't suggest that. Maybe I should have put debunked. I put conspiracy in our title, it won't suggest it to anyone. But if you just do their, you know, their channel, no search. No, okay, maybe I've got that wrong. If you just go back from our search, their videos on their channel, this person, it's got a lot about homeschooling, look. Remember what I said about preschool? Homeschooling doesn't have to be expensive. This is a video of, meanwhile, at my house. I think she's videoed her own children and put them on the internet. That's a good idea, isn't it? Videoing your own children and putting them on the internet. So there they are. They've got 3,000 views, more than my channel. She obviously homeschools her children, if I'm reading this correctly, and has got her whole family's had COVID there in 2021. Whole family had COVID. So she's homeschooling and she's telling people about homeschooling in these videos. And then there's these other videos that are about like question the narrative, how they control us. Homeschooling means quality plus quantity. Question the narrative, lunatic asylums. Question the narrative, mud flood window. So far be it from me to critique her method of homeschooling, but I'm a bit worried because after I watched this Tartaria video, right, after I watched this, I was a bit surprised because you'll see, we're going to watch it now together. The person that made this video is homeschooling their children, and I worry for their children. I worry for their children. Let's get into it. Very rude of me to say that, wasn't it? Very rude of me to say that. Ooh, very rude. Bear in mind, they've got loads more subscribers than me. They've got loads more. They're like well up on the YouTube compared to me. Well up on it, look. All these comments, look at all that. Look at that, well up on. If you're watching this, subscribe to me, you chuffer. They've also got a Patreon. Right, I've got a Patreon. They've got a Patreon. And they're getting 120 quid a month. It's loads of money. Loads of money for this rubbish. What rubbish you mean? What rubbish? Let's get into it.
You're watching There's No Place Like Home. Today I actually had a completely different topic in mind for my Question the Narrative series video. I actually even made the thumbnail for it. I was all ready. And then someone sent me an email that really spurred on my interest in a topic that I had been thinking about for a while, but
this is weird because I obviously have to critique things as a media producer because I'm a media producer first and foremost. No, I'm not anything first and foremost. First and foremost, I'm just a normal person who likes sitting around playing computer games. Right, look, she's telling us about something that's not on the video, that she was going to make the video about something else, but that's just conversational rubbish. 20 seconds in, edit that off. You don't need that.
Didn't really look too much into. And as I looked into it more today, I realized that it is likely the mother of all rabbit holes. But I am not ready to get into that here today for a couple reasons. First, I just want to look into it more and make sure that I can kind of fit the pieces together and feel confident that it's a possibility. And I also, before I actually dove into that, I wanted to make sure that you would understand some of the things that I would be referring to if I do make a video on that topic.
Dove. Is dove a real word? Past participle of dive. Is it participle dived? I dived, yeah. However, dove is an Americanism, and this tends to be used more in American English. Okay, that's why. I thought it didn't sound like a real word, but that's because it's an Americanism. In England, we wouldn't say I dove. It's a minor. That's a minor. It's nothing to do with what we're really talking about.
Because I will be talking about things called resets, mud floods, and Tartaria.
So she's going to be talking about resets, mud floods, and Tartaria. This OneDrive thing that she's showing us, she uses this pretty exclusively throughout the video. So I don't know what this is, if this is something she's constructed herself, but I don't seem to have access to that. But
Now, there are a lot of people nowadays who do know what resets, mud floods, and Tartaria are because it is definitely a burgeoning topic. But
All right, okay, but we don't. We want you to tell us. This is my avenue in. There may be better videos on Tartaria than this. She may not be the authority. No one may be. But we're going to start here. So we're going to start here.
there are still people who really don't seem to know much about them.
Yeah, I don't know about mud floods and a Great Reset and Tartaria. I mean, I do know that the Tartars were real people. No, wait, let me just, because you're going to be Tartars. The Tartars were real people, weren't they? It was old Turkic. I mean, this is Wikipedia, so maybe people are going to say, oh, Wikipedia, you can't believe Wikipedia. But, you know, the entity Tartar referred to the entire Tartar Confederation, look, which is like all of that. It's the Mongol Empire, look. It's got Tartar on it there. That confederation was incorporated into the Mongol Empire when Genghis Khan unified. The term Tartars was applied to anyone originating from northern and central Asian landmass, known then as Tartary. Tartary. It was a blanket term used in Western Europe, where we're from, Western Europe. Map makers, cartographers, basically said that whole area there, the mountains to the ocean, near China, Persia. Like, we didn't know so much about all of it in detail. Maybe we did know quite a bit in detail because we'd trade and we had. Anyway, look, they called it Tartary. That's where the words come from. It's this area. It's basically like Northern Asia. That's what we used to call it. All these countries above my head here are all part of what could have been considered Tartary, apparently. I don't know. Regions with significant populations. It's strange that you see Canada on that list. So maybe, and the United States, so maybe it's got something to do with northern Siberia connecting up in that way, you know, and Alaska and all that. But it's history. It's not, accurate. They hadn't got very accurate maps back then. No satellites. It was a movable feast. It was a changing setup, you know, as countries evolved and changed and Genghis Khan took over and this and that, we started referring to this bit and that bit as Tartar. You know, it wasn't so nailed down back then. I get it, but that's where it's come from. That's what we're talking about.
And
apparently,
really, if you're going to understand a lot of my upcoming videos, it's important.
I'm a bit worried about this that I can see on screen, which appears to be an artist's rendition of Noah's Ark.
Important that you understand what these things are. And when I...
It's important we understand what they are. We do understand what Tartary and Tartar is now, don't we? So
I first found this community, I didn't know what resets were. I didn't know what a mud flood was, and I didn't...
What? Resets? I mean, you've got a computer. You know, when it goes wrong and you have to turn it off and on again, that's a reset, isn't it? Reset. Maybe you do say reset. Reset, yeah, a reset. It's obvious what a reset is, isn't it? It's when you stop something and start it up again. And then mud floods, they're obvious as well. They're when mud floods. Now you get mud floods. I'll just quickly, because she's mentioned it, mud floods. While I do this, I want my calm and relaxing music on, thank you. Mud floods. You get mud floods, right? On your cozy here, look. Oh, look, these are the Tartarian things coming up. This is what we're about to look into, so don't get into this yet. Look, that's not an area that's been mud flooded and then they built on top of it. That's the... Oh, look, is that what people think? Tartaria, look. That's where they've dug out all the foundations underneath the buildings. And certainly old European cities built up and on top of previous buildings in ways, and foundations. What was maybe a first floor became a foundation in some places. You look into the history, it's interesting in construction and building. But they've dug out from around these buildings, haven't they? They're in the middle of a modern city and they've had to dig out all the foundation work from around these buildings to do some sort of building work here. So that's what's happening there. I doubt that city was once flooded up to the roofs in mud and then they started again. I don't think that's what happened there. That's not an indicative of that. You know, because some places have basements. Because some places have basements, and if you dig down, you can find them. Doesn't mean that was once the first floor or the roof, does it? That's not what it means. The reason I wanted to look at mud floods, though, and I'm surprised I'm not getting an actual, image of a mud flood, is that usually what happens is that you get the mud comes from higher up to lower down. I mean, mud slides, they might be called. The mud comes from higher up to lower down through a natural weather event like a storm, you know, a tsunami, something like that, the mud floods through. Look, it doesn't cover the houses necessarily, does it? It doesn't cover the houses. You might get a few things that are covered. I mean, these are the best examples of actual recent mud flooding today, aren't they? Homes wiped out, look, but the roofs are still visible. Sierra Leone flooding there, terrible mud flooding. The roofs are still visible. Now, maybe we'll get deeper into mud flooding in a bit, but let's get back to the video and see what they're saying about it, because now we know what they are. She said that we needed to know what these things are. We know what these things are now. Let's see what...
I didn't really understand the concept of Tartaria, and I didn't really see a whole lot. I saw a lot of great videos showing examples of them, but I never felt that I had like a really good understanding of what they were.
Right, well, that's because you're not a construction engineer, are you? You're not trained in construction engineering or geology, obviously, because otherwise you would have that fun. I'm not trained fully. My dad works in construction and I'm interested in geology, but I'm not trained fully, you know, but maybe I know a little bit more than you. Maybe I should be teaching your kids.
So when you hear the word reset, especially nowadays, you're likely thinking of a financial reset.
I'm thinking of that weird conspiracy theory where they reckon that they want to reset the world.
Because that's all people are talking about nowadays.
Well, not all people, some people. Depends who you're talking to, doesn't it?
And the reset that I'm referring to is not a financial reset. It is...
Do you know what? This would be better with the music.
It's actually much bigger than a financial reset. It is what I would call a civilization reset.
Civilization reset coming.
Or you could call it a historical reset, but it is not just a reset based on the financial system.
No, okay, so she's saying it's not what we think it might be.
It's a reset of an entire people group, of an entire locale, sometimes worldwide.
So entire people, bear that in mind, what she's saying here, it's a reset of everyone, sometimes worldwide. I don't know what that means. What, do people get wiped out, taken away and shot, and then like you put new ones in? Is that the suggestion? Worldwide, bear in mind.
Think about it.
You'd think we'd have noticed.
Noah's flood could be considered a biblical reset.
Absolutely, Noah's flood could be considered a biblical reset. In that story, this is why I said we should start with who wrote the Bible, but we'll get onto that in a minute. In that story, not today, we probably won't, but you know, in that story, Noah's flood, yeah? In that story, the whole world was flooded, wasn't it? And sort of everyone died apart from Noah and his family and all the animals that went on the boat. But there aren't many people these days who believe that was factually correct. Artist's rendition there.
The entire world, besides Noah, his wife, their 3 sons and their sons' wives, was killed in Noah's flood, and they were the only ones that were left. Mm-hmm. And from everything being covered, there was, besides the people who were gone, there was an entire civilization that was left in ruins or covered. There are a lot of these things that we see today that...
Again, this is an artist's impression.
We don't realize we're likely here pre-flood.
Pre-flood. So now she's assuming that the flood is a true historical event of which we have no historical record.
And so, yes, you could definitely consider Noah's flood to be a biblical reset. Another example of what I would think would be a biblical reset would be the...
Is that the Tower of Babel?
Tower of Babel.
Babel. Hey, Luke, how's it going? Noah had 3 sons. How did they repopulate? With great difficulty. Well, they had a lot of animals as well, didn't they? They had a lot of animals. So, I'm not here to debunk Noah, but obviously that's how we can. We're going to debunk Noah in a different episode, like who wrote the Bible. But she's referring. We're getting on to. I just want to look at Babel as well because I'm not educated enough about Babel and the Tower of Babel, which will come up. Look, there he is, Wikipedia. It was a narrative in Genesis, so it's real old Bible stuff. It's just meant to explain why we all speak different languages. According to the story, a united race following the Great Flood spoke a single language. God mixed up all our speech and then scattered us around the world. And there's this tower, the ziggurat, dedicated to Mesopotamian god in Babylon. A Sumerian story is similar. So like, it's just like, you know, real old Bible stuff, this is. Real old Bible stuff. So
So they were all working together, and they decided that they were going to build this tower up to the heavens. And
it is a nice story, isn't it? It is a nice story. I'm not here to debunk the Bible today. She's using it as a setup for this great mud flood Tartaria thing. So this isn't actual Tartaria. This is like, it's happened before, so it can happen again.
They decided that they were going to basically fight with God. They wanted to.
This lady homeschools her children, remember? She's on her YouTube channel. She homeschools her children.
Start war with God. And God said, nope, that's it. So he scrambled up their languages and they were dispersed throughout.
Yep, this is a God story. So she might be into God. She's called No Place Like Home. Don't go and abuse her, but she's got 40,000 subscribers and I've got like 40. So she's like, I'm punching up.
Throughout the world because they couldn't communicate with each other anymore. And so, so this might not have been worldwide in this area. It still affected the world.
I've just noticed in the top left, it says photos, Babel.jpg. This is labeled photos, Babel. Again, this is an artist's impression. This isn't the actual Tower of Babel.
Again, they were dispersed throughout all the land. So yes, that could be considered a biblical reset.
Okay, but we set the scene here. If you believe in that, and you believe in those biblical resets, which we're going to come to Who Wrote the Bible in another episode. If you believe in that, though, it may be possible to have the world reset by God.
Now, I do plan on doing a future video on biblical resets because I believe that there were more biblical resets than just those two.
Okay.
But when I talk about when I talk about resets today, I'm really referring more to the recent resets that a lot of us are suspicious of happening.
Right. This is a photograph. This one actually is a photograph, look. This actually is a photograph. It's black and white, so we don't know if it's old or if it's, just in black and white. I can't make out much detail because it's small in, on the YouTube screen. There's some gardens here. There's a building with some Gothic spires and a clock face. This might be some sort of town hall building or something. There's some wires in the foreground, telephone wires, I assume. So I think we're modern America there. We don't know. There's not really any way to... some people might know where that is. I might be able to do a GeoGuessr on it. But it's a photograph of a modern place. Why is that evidence of a reset?
There are a lot of very strange things that happened in the 1800s.
1800s now. Okay, 1800s. Let's just pick this out because it's important. 1800s. There are a lot of important things that happened in the 1800s. Birmingham City Football Club was founded, I'll have you know. Look, they got cars. Look. They're all dressed up. They've got buildings. This is the modern world. If you lived in the 1800s, you would consider yourself pretty chuffing modern. Post-industrial revolution. We've got motor vehicles. We've got electricity, I think, haven't we? In the 1800s. At some point. And, modern medicine is forming. Modern institutions. That's a gas light there. Man lighting the gas light. Schools, look. You'd have recognised the world. It'd have still been like ye olde worldy to us now, wouldn't it? But, it was... Look, they've all got their shoes on. They've all got shoes on and... do you know what I mean? It's Oxford University there. I mean, it just feels like quite a modern world, the 1800s. Even though it's 100 years ago now, it's still quite a modern world, isn't it, the 1800s? Still quite a modern world. And let's just see what in Wikipedia we've got anything specific that we can pick out that happened. Napoleonic Wars, slavery, political events. Electricity happened, astronomy, political events. The unfinished White House housed its first president. So it's the start of America. So I think this is one of the problems for Americans, and no offence to Americans, but if this is the start of your history, you might think it's early doors. But actually, we've been going for a lot longer. In the UK, we've been going a lot longer than that. We weren't putting up our White House at this point. We'd already had our Houses of Parliament and stuff, well in place for a long time. So new world begins, but the old world has been, well entrenched. Canada, Russia, America, New Spain. So yeah, it's the birth of the new world. Science and technology, look. Steam carriages. Steam became viable in 1803. So it's the Industrial Revolution. It's the Steam Age. You know, they're not in the Dark Ages by any means. Okay, they're not in the Dark Ages by any means. They're quite capable of producing this, what looks quite modern.
And so many things that don't make sense, so many photos that don't seem to add up with the technology that people are said to have had. And so here is just one example. So we have this beautiful building, and you can see in the background here that there is, you know, it's completely built out with buildings and everything.
Yep. That seems fine to me. They built a building in 1800. Oh, yeah, if it's not America, it didn't matter. We're starting the real world now, not the new world, the real world. But yeah, this lady seems to have a blind spot in her her own education about history, because she seems surprised that America could build buildings like that. Assuming this is America. I've got no way of evidencing that this is America, but she's telling me it's strange that this is all built like this. So.
But you will see that there's really no people. So we have all these buildings here, and we're lucky if we see a couple people.
Right, I can tell you for 2 easy reasons why I could say that would be the case. Number one, first thing, I can see a person. Right, let me just move my head and the browser. I'm assuming this is a person. Let me just move the browser so you can see it. There, on the very right, just above my head. Just above my head there on the very right. That looks like a person, little hat, little dress. I think that's a person. Yeah? Just above me. Just above me, just... Come on, finger. Just there. Yeah? It might not be. Because, I'll tell you for why, right? When you take a photograph like this, in the 1800s, they didn't have digital cameras and that. When you take a photograph like this, certainly if you're doing architecture, because they're obviously taking a photograph here of the buildings and the square, aren't they? It's obviously of the architecture. So it might be that it's a fairly recent building, they've taken a photograph of that. What they would do is they'd wait for the right time of day for the light. So they'd want the light to be shining on the building from the front. So I don't know where this building's built and the facing of the building or any of that, but I do know that it might have to be early in the morning to get that light. It might have to be that. The other thing you do is you do it really early in the morning because there'll be less people, because you're not trying to take a photograph of loads of people in the way. You want the building. So sometimes you get up at like 4 in the morning for the first light to take the early morning photographs. If you're a photographer, you choose to do that because there are less people in the way. If I want to get a shot of my local town with no people in it, I can go out tomorrow morning at 5 in the morning and take that photograph as the sun comes up. No one else is going to be around. And if they are, they're like street sweepers and people who are falling asleep after a night out drunk. I can shoot the other way and make, you know, I can frame them out. I could also paint them out if I wanted to. If I had somebody lying on that bit of grass and I didn't like the way they were in the way, photography at this time, they could literally edit them out with analog techniques, painting them out, dodging and with the, as you're making the photograph in the dark room, you can literally hold something over the person so they don't appear on the thing. There are some inconsistencies, I would say. There's this light lamp, hang on if I can't point. The lamp post you can see on the left of frame. You can see a lamp post on the left of frame. Just to the left of that, it's like quite a smudgy, problematic area with some smudges and inconsistencies. That might be photographic inconsistency with the printing of the photograph. They might have done it deliberately to smudge something out. They call it dodging or burning. So that can happen. On top of that, so we've gone for the time of day. We've gone for the photographic techniques can remove people like Photoshop. There's the third thing about photography back then. If you're taking a building, you're going to be using a long shutter speed. You're going to have the shutter open for a long time to let as much light in as possible and get a really nice sharp image of the stable building. Sorry, I'm not keeping up with the chat here. And yeah, smudging out the aliens. You take a long shutter speed. So if you leave that shutter open, the building is captured really crisp and really well. If there are people walking around, they kind of disappear. They become like smudges. So in this pathway, just to the right of the lamppost that I just asked you to look at, there are 2 little smudges. Let's try and do my finger. Right, I'll put my finger and then I'll move the browser. There. There are 2 little smudges there. They could be people. They could be people that were moving. I don't know. They could be trees. It's hard to tell, isn't it? We haven't got that level of detail. So there's that. Yeah, there's that. On top of that, what Snippy just said in chat is absolutely true. They could have told everyone to stay away. This could be an educational facility. This could be a school. I don't know what it is, but let's say it's a school, yeah? They could take the picture when everyone's in class. Couldn't they? Like, have you ever been to your school and at like class time, there's nobody out anywhere because everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing? This could be a picture on a busy work day when everyone's busy at work. It might be a very modern build. It might be a new area. Maybe they haven't started working in these buildings yet. Maybe they're yet to fill the spaces with people. Maybe they're taking the photos before they let the buildings out. I don't know. But there's so many reasons why there'd be no people in a photo, aren't there? I've just explained so many, right? Now, bear in mind that our friend There's No Place Like Home here on YouTube. I'm just going to copy and paste their video in here so I can go to their channel. I shouldn't be too mean to them. I'm not trying to be mean to them. I'm trying to just look at the conspiracy theory. But I am worried because they homeschool. They homeschool their children. And they don't seem to have a very good grasp of what's going on in the world. Bit worrisome.
Do I see anyone? No, I think there's one, two. There's a woman there.
Oh, she spotted them.
But yeah, and this is a common theme that you're going to see in a lot of these old photos. You're going to see these very crowded looking cities, but you will see very empty streets. Right,
this is going to be a surprise to you, but there were less people in America in 1800. Like, I could show you Nigeria, new city, right? Check this out. This is going to blow your mind. This is a city in Nigeria. Look at it. It's by the sea. Look at it. It's going to open up. There are going to be all these hotels. It's going to be amazing. It looks amazing, doesn't it? At the moment, it's just investment and a few buildings. And as those buildings go up, right? As those buildings go up, this presumably quite barren landscape is going to fill up with buildings. It's going to fill up with buildings before it fills up with people. It's a bit like the Wild West, the new America, the new world. They build all the buildings because they've got like money to build buildings. Certainly big institutions, certainly British colonial, certainly big institutions go over there with a bit of money and set up a big building. It doesn't mean everywhere around it is then filled up in its place. You imagine the way the city's evolved over time. People put up their first buildings, their town halls, their this and that, and then other people came to the city and said, oh, I'll join in, I'll set up a little shop. When you had a gold rush, it all happened really quick. This isn't happening as quick as a gold rush. It's like a gold rush. It's a new world. They're doing it with investment in Nigeria. You can see a similar thing, look. There's not that many people in this picture. There's a great big skyscraper, no people. No people. That's currently under construction, but you'll see it all over the world in places that are being modernised and being constructed. That's Lagos. This is in The Guardian. Woos investors to the project. So you see it all over the world. These things are happening, and you won't see loads and loads of people walking around in the streets there because they're new build developments that are yet to be populated, but they build them with the idea that there's going to be a lot of people because there's going to be a lot of people, aren't there? So, they leave the space for the people. That's what they do. So that's very similar to that. It's very reminiscent to that. If it's new America, isn't it? If it's new America, new world, if we're in the new world here and you've got like a new building, big institution there, maybe it's not full of people yet. I don't know. These are just suggestions. Better suggestions than all the people were removed.
They're almost like ghost towns, so to speak. Okay. Here's another example. So now,
imagine if you could get paid thousands of dollars.
I'm now helping them with their advertising revenue, bear in mind. They've got 40,000 subscribers. I've got 40. I need some more.
I believe the Capitol building in the background, and some would call that a construction photo of the Capitol building. And it may well be. I say that it could also be maybe them renovating.
Sorry about my funny Yogi Bear laugh. Renovating? They haven't even put the roof on. Why would they be renovating it in ye olde, new world? They're going over there to start the new world. Why would they be renovating it? And this is exactly what I was just talking about. It's a brand new Capitol building. So around it looks quite rubbish because they're just putting up the big expensive thing that the institutions can afford. This in front of us is a church. The church looks good, doesn't it? Well, that's because the church get out there straight away. They were out there for ages in the South America with the Spaniards. They were out there with the Portuguese. The church have been everywhere. They're all over. The church transcend different societies, and they've got loads of money. So if you start up a new world, you say like, okay, this is our new place. We're building a Capitol building. The church will be like, oh, hang on, wallop. There's a church. Enjoy. And next to it, there'll be little, rough, cheaper buildings because the individual people, the individual people haven't got that much money to put up loads of buildings. But as these things develop, as people get jobs in the Capitol building, they'll put up new structures around it, little shops, little restaurants. It's insane. It's like, have you never played SimCity or anything? Like, you assume that by looking at this, something odd is up. But why would you? Why?
The building, because it looks like the dome might already be underneath there. And if you happen to notice, I think that this building actually looks like it had been there a while because of how overgrown all of this vegetation is. Usually,
the building looks like it's there for a while because of all the trees and stuff. Well, that's because trees are there. You can't judge how long a building's been there by the amount of trees outside, can you? You can't judge that. Otherwise, the pyramids wouldn't have been there very long. There's no trees. And it just doesn't make sense. They're doing some building up the roads. I should take my camera out and show you. They're building a new housing estate. And all around it is trees. Because they don't own all the land all around it. So they're not going to go and demolish all of the trees all around everywhere. They're just going to focus on their building plot.
if you're going to build a new building, you are going to clear out all the land around it. And I just find it odd that they would have all of this vegetation around there.
Right, and another point here. No, I just said that you don't clear out all the land around a new building because you don't own it. But what you might see is they did spend time building this building. It's like 3 floors high. It's quite big. They're now putting this roof thing on with the dome and the crane. Maybe, and I don't know if you've spotted this in your time in this world, but maybe this vegetation, which we can't see, it's all just smudged and blurred. It's all just smudged and blurred. We can't tell what it really is. But maybe that could grow in a couple of years. Maybe it takes more than a year to build this building. Maybe it takes more than a year. And maybe a bush can grow in a year.
And, it's hard to see in these old photographs. But I think that even along the sides of the building, some of it does look aged. But that's not even the point of this photograph. That's not why I even got it. I just had to point that out. All right. You will see again that, there's not really people. You don't see anyone around here. And other
no people. Proof. Oh, what am I doing? I should take my children out of school, homeschool them. I should take my children out of school and homeschool them. There she is. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to have a look at her in a minute. I mean, I don't feel angry at her. If she's watching this, I don't feel angry at her. I mean, I feel a bit worried for her children. I don't feel angry at her. I feel worried for America because this is you here, America. But she's like really this is what's important to me, Big Face. I think it's fair that I say this. I'm not trying to bully someone on the internet. I'm having a laugh at the things she's saying. She's put them out there. She's made a YouTube channel to promote these views. So if you've got these views and you're quiet about it, like, whatever, I can't get at you. But if you're up, putting your head above the parapet, so to speak, and you're promoting this, and you've got a load more subscribers than I have, then I'm quite, you're fair game. You're in the public sphere. And on top of that, you've given me a reason to worry about your children. And children are important. Children are important. It's actually a form of abuse to teach children a load of rubbish instead of school. That's a form of abuse. So actually, I'm in the right 100% and she can chuff off. So you can't call me a bully. I'm punching up.
Interesting thing that you will find with a lot of these reset photos is you will see these big glorious buildings, but you will see dirt roads. And you just have to think, if these people have, this ingenuity and can build beautiful things like this, you would think they would at least fix the roads.
Well, you'd think that if the people had great ingenuity and could build it, are you suggesting they haven't got the ingenuity? No, we have got the ingenuity. We built these we built that. Humans with their hands. There's someone up there right now on that scaffold with that crane. Humans doing the building. Yes, total believe it. They died Back in those days, people would die regularly on construction sites like that because they didn't have all the health and safety and stuff we have now. Absolutely, they did build it though. We're not suggesting they didn't. We know that they did. Absolutely, we know that. We've got photographic evidence. So the thing is, though, the roads, she was saying. Now, it's easy to counter this if you're educated. If you weren't homeschooled by some crazed loon, then, see, I'm not being rude. I'm just saying, real phrases that describe her right. Slaves, of course. What am I saying? In England, we didn't have that system. We had Irish people. I'm half Irish, I can say. I'm 40% Irish, 40% English, and 10% Indian. So I can say what I like. Yeah, we had Irish, you had slaves, and it was them that did it. Absolutely. What am I saying? Of course. But the roads, right? The roads come a little bit later because there are no plans for where the roads go because we haven't built the town. The town starts out small. There's no point in building a big motorway out to the middle of nowhere, is there? Your roads start off small. Your church is built by the people that own the church. Your capital building is built by the big institutions. They're busy doing that. After that, they might lay a few roads, you might think. Roads technology in the 1800s. Let's find out what that was. Roads in the 1800s, please. Roads, 1800s. So in the UK, we would have cobble streets. We would have put like bricks and, like these roads, these 1800 roads in the 1800s, what I want you to be observant of is that they were designed more for horse and cart, like that we didn't have so much motor transport, it was just taking off. So they were designed more for a sort of horse and cart, cobbled in the UK, stone, but essentially, look, this is a car in the 1800s getting stuck in a mud road. Because they hadn't prepared for wheeled motor vehicles. We did in the 1800s have bricks and like the Romans built roads. I'll show you Roman roads. Roads in the UK a long time ago. And since the Romans, we've had this basic, simple concept of building up of more hard materials, sand, stone, blocks. So we've had roads in the UK for a long time, but they weren't wide and multi-lane. You see what I'm saying? They're not designed for cars, yeah? So when you design a new place like this in the early 1800s, you didn't think there's going to be like traffic lanes and cars and buses. That's not what was in their head. They needed spaces for the horse and carts to get through. And then their priorities were slightly different. Build the capital building. The person that owns the church doesn't own the road in front and they can do nothing about it. You have to wait for the town to come together, to gather the money together, to say, right, it's time to put down a main street. And in America, it wasn't all dust and mud and slop. Those main streets, those dirt tracks, those spaces would have been quite adequate for the horses and carts in the main. So, motor vehicles start to take over and you start to improve the surfaces. The places get bigger, you start to get bigger roads. What a strange thing to believe that because this photograph doesn't appear to have a tarmac road, that there's something up.
But they don't. A lot of the roads...
Have you played Red Dead Redemption? It's not full of roads, mate.
Those are complete dirt paths. They have, a lot of them are completely filled with mud. And again, no people. Now, some of the other reset photos, I wish that I would have thought too.
I have to keep stopping her so often, but no people, yeah. I don't know if you've noticed, there's not much for the people to go and do in this one, is there? You might be visiting this restaurant, this store in America. It's not a shop in America, it's a store. You might be visiting that. You might be in the church. This photograph might be taken at just gone church time, with everyone in the town busy in the church right now. Mightn't it? There's reasons. There's explanations. It doesn't mean that there was no people. Otherwise, how would the church be put there?
To gather some of these. I had seen a John Levi video a while ago, and
we've got to look at some of these other people in the future. We've got so much wealth of content to look at with Tartaria.
He had photos of people who were in Atlantic City on the beach, and I believe it was the early 1900s maybe. The people looked completely out of place. They looked like they had never been to a beach before.
That's probably because these people in the early 1900s are the first generation to have the free time to go and spend it at a beach. Because before that, they'd have been working in factories 7 days a week. Do you know what I mean? The disposable income and the free time to be able to go to the beach only came about because of the Industrial Revolution. Before that, people had a harder life. And when they went to the beach, we didn't have the same sort of culture built up over the last 100 years of beach life. So they'd have turned up and it would have been their first experience. Imagine your first trip to, and you don't know what you're expecting. You probably would look a little out of place. You probably wouldn't be dressed for it. You might not have a bucket and spade and a modern bathing suit and sunglasses, mightn't you?
They were fully clothed, and by fully clothed, I'm sure you know that people in early 1900s, they dressed to the nines. So these women were dressed in these long dresses with their hats, and then...
Also, we know that in the early 1900s, there was sexism, wasn't there? And if a woman went on the beach with like her clothes off, people might say things. Who knows? You know, there's so many more complex reasons. And also, we're not even looking at the picture. She's not even brought us the picture. We're just going on her word here.
And men had their suits on and their like bowler type hats, and they were sitting on the beach like that with
no surfers. Clearly a reset. Yeah, no surfers. What's going on?
no towels. And
no towels and nobody owned towels.
Bewildered looks on their faces, like they didn't know what was going on, kind of like they were put there and told to stay there. And that is something else that you will see.
I'll tell you something else. We're not looking at the photo that she's talking about, so we can't verify. But if there were people in the image, that goes against what she was saying, because she said there were no people in the pictures. Now, there are people in the pictures. They don't know how they got there. They're beamed out from space. Actually, if someone's taking a photograph of you in 1900s on the beach, there's another reason you might look a bit confused and disoriented. You might be worried about what that person was doing with that box thing that you don't recognise, because not everyone has a camera. You might think, oh my God, look, someone's taking it. In the same way as if I went with a video camera, like, you know, a TV crew down to the beach, people might behave differently because there's a TV crew. What are they doing? They might be looking at you while you're filming them. Who knows? But the camera would have been an alien object in their day-to-day lives in that way, certainly for their trip to the beach, and they might have been posing.
In a lot of these reset photos is people who seem like they don't belong. And so I actually recently saw this comment on another video, and it really puts together how I feel about them. Now, sometimes
The Inheritors remind me of The Inheritors, where everyone was wiped out and you knew people inherited the earth. The Inheritors remind me of a popular TV show from the early 60s, the Beverly Hillbillies. Even they put that in brackets, even though it should be in inverted commas, and they put their final bracket inside the punctuation where it should be outside the punctuation. And that shows you that this person's not that smart. Even though they bought the mansion with Jed Clampett's money from the oil he found in his yard, full stop. See, they've not constructed a sentence properly here. Even though they bought the mansion with Jed Clampett's money from the oil he found in his yard, they've got that sentence construction problems. The Clampetts are out of sorts with the new mansion, their surroundings, the environment, how things worked in the mansion, etc. Again, that should be comma, etc. And etc. is etc. is a shortening of the word etc. So you put the dot, the punctuation point, to show that you're shortening it. So if that's the end of your sentence, you need a second dot to show that's the end of your sentence. So if you don't know about punctuation, I'm not going to trust you on matters of the world and wisdom, am I? They resorted to their old ways of doing things they only knew from the mountains. What they're saying is that the first people to engage with the modern conveniences of the new world weren't educated in dealing with the modern conveniences of the new world. The very first people to drive cars drove them like the Beverly Hillbillies, because they'd never driven a chuffing car before, because they had never. They were the first people to have them. They are like that. The people that inherited the new world, they didn't come down from space. They're just the people that were born into this new world. In the same way as, you know, there are grown-ups today that play on a mobile phone like they don't know what they're doing. Not so much anymore. But you know what I mean? There are technologies that come out now that baffle people, and they seem like rubes because they can't use the modern technology. But it's just because the world changes quick.
People will call the people who tend and Beverly Yard.
I'm just going to skip on past that because it's just a comment about a comment, you idiot.
Like they are interacting with their environment and how it works. Okay, so I hope that gives you a good idea, at least, of what a reset is. A basic, it could, and I should also say that a reset could happen from, like
Wait. She's going to moan about resets, but I'll just pause on this because I can see some really interesting pictures, and I know she's going to pick them out. I can't wait. I can't wait for the laughs The laughs are ahead.
Already told you an act of God, but a reset could happen from an earthquake, a very large earthquake.
She said a reset could happen from an act of God. I've already told you that, but it could happen from an earthquake. An earthquake's not an act of God. You either believe in God and you think that the floods and earthquakes are acts of God, or you don't and you don't. You can't have it both ways. An earthquake, if you put it on your insurance form, is literally an act of God.
Say a volcano.
A volcano! A volcano! There's no volcanoes in America. The people weren't swallowed by a volcano. There are volcanoes in America.
A war, an entire area could be completely bombed out, and that could be considered a reset event if pretty much everything is wiped out.
We could bomb everything out, and that's a reset event, yeah.
Some people have even talked about plasma and direct energy weapons. So there are
plasma weapons, space wars. Angie says it gives me a good idea of how arrogant and educated this person is. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It shows you into their mind. This does shows you into their mind, because it is their mind. It is their mind, and it's fucking loop de loop, and they're into the homeschooling. So we're going to look at their homeschooling hopefully this episode. But my car music's been paused, and I'm getting more irate.
A lot of different ways that these resets can happen.
Should be a Congress.
That's really what it is. Now, the next thing that I'm going to talk about is mud floods, because that ties in with the reset events, because a lot of times it is thought that what caused these resets was some sort of mud flood.
Right, mud floods. Now, I don't know again what this image is. I don't know where they are. So I'm going to have to do this off of my head. Right, let's pretend, because this is the second time I have seen this image, because I watched this video last night and thought, what the fuck, I'm bringing this to stream. Let's pretend this is the first time I've seen it. I have to decide what's going on. You have to decide what's going on. What we can see is a stone-faced building, but it's not ancient Petra or anything like that. You can see behind it, there's more stonework and masonry. It actually looks like there's some sort of, it might be moss on the top of that wall. It might be, so that might be an older construction there. Might be an older construction. And then it might not be, though. It might be a newer construction. All around it and down into the what we'd probably call the rest of the town are all buildings. They look established buildings. You're not building them all in one go with all rubble. But like, why is all the road missing? What we're seeing here, what she thinks is a mud flood, some sort of mudslide, actually appears to us to be all dug up, doesn't it? If you look in this foreground, you can see piles of rock. Yeah, in the foreground we can see piles of rock. Absolutely guarantee that. This big building on our on the left, not my left, my right, over there. The big building over there that I said has got the big stone fascia. Yeah, that's got a wooden stick fence around it, and it's the kind of wooden stick fence that you'll notice is all raggedy taggedy, all different heights. That's not a permanent fence. That's the sort of thing you put in on building sites just as like a barrier. Right? I know a little bit about construction, so I'll tell you what's going on here. The old buildings have been in place for a while. They've had those mud roads in the middle. Yeah? They've had those mud roads from the middle. Some of these buildings further down the street that you can see they've dug out where the road is, and you can see there's some concrete and structure from the buildings jutting out now into what is a void. Because those buildings were built with actual foundations, with cellars and foundations. They dug out those things and built them in. And at this point in the town's development, this seems to be, if I'm right, guessing an American town. It might be, this is just an educated guess, that they decided we're going to put in a proper road system. Maybe even a subway, not a subway, sorry, what am I saying, a sewer. Maybe a sewer system, something like that. In order to do that, what they've done is they've put that fence around this building. In the foreground is the best explanation. It's obvious to see. They put the fence around it. We're not going to dig any closer than that. If you want to walk around and stay safe, go that side of the fence. Beyond that, they've dug out and down. Dug out and down. Now, why have we got these piles of rock? Are they digging those out of the ground? No. These are the piles of rock that are going to go in to those voids when we're finished with our laying our pipes or whatever it is we're doing. And then once we put those rocks in, we're going to put the proper surface on top. That's going to be a hardcore, and it's going to be a surface road. So the bit beyond the fence up to the building we're not going to dig into. We're going to leave the building as it is, but the road bit in front we're going to dig all out. So we've left enough space there in front of that building so we don't collapse it. Yeah? And it looks like the building is slightly sunk down now because they've built up this berm next to it. In a way, like digging out, moving soil, they kind of built up a bit of a berm. Probably to protect the building. Further down the road, they've not built up those berms. They've just dug out up close to the buildings, revealing the cellars, and the concrete flooring sort of juts out into it. You can see that all over. So this is a roadway or a railway or a tramway or a subway. Well, probably not a subway because they didn't have them back then. But when I say subway, I mean subsurface. Maybe it's laying electrical cables or pipes. It's definitely a big municipal engineering project. And that is obvious as well because there are lots of people stood around in this area. These people they say that don't exist. Yeah? You can see them all around in the foreground. You can see the ones that are standing still, but just beyond, if I do my little pointer, I've got to get my... I'm not very good at knowing which way I go on the camera. Just there, right, you can see someone in the street, and they seem like a ghostly figure. They're not quite detailed. They're not as sharp as the other figures, because they're walking up the street. So that proves that the shutter speed is such that a person walking becomes a blur. Because they're not in one place, they're moving as the camera's taking the photo and the shutter's open, they're moving across the frame like that, they become a blur. So further, and I'll move the browser and I'll move it closer to me so I can point. I need some sort of pointer thing. You can't see my cursor on the screen and I can't get my head around being reversed on the thing. But these people, look, you can see a group and it's like one person, two persons, and then there's a three-headed person with three legs. I believe that's one person that's moved into two positions, three positions during the photographing. Like they might have took a position, then took another position, then took another position, and they appear to be a three jointed. But they're three different people, or they're the same person photographed three different times because of the way the photograph is taken in that fashion. You know, it's an anomaly on the photograph. So we've got people in the frame, which goes against what they said was happening before. Why are there no people in the buildings on the streets? Because you wouldn't be hanging around in the building sites. Why aren't they all moving and busy building? Because someone's taking the photograph. Some of them are posing. These three in the foreground down here where it says Gravekeeper, they're actually looking at the camera. They're interested in the photographer doing their work. They're taking a break and they're interested in the photographer. So this is constructing roads. That's what this is.
So as you will see in this photo here, we have these beautiful buildings, except this building, it looks very old. Now that
doesn't look that old. Do you remember what I said? It looks like it's got fascia on the front to look at. It's like Edwardian pillars. Look at an Edwardian fascia. Well, Edwardian in my mind is not that old, but it's contrast, isn't it? It's whether your 1800s is old to you in America or whether, like in England, you know, Shakespeare's. We've got buildings in my town that are from the 1400s still standing and before. So like, it depends on your perception of old. But what it actually is, it's a bit dirty on the fascia. Back in these days, remember, they'd have been burning coal, they'd have been burning fossil fuels. There'd have been a lot more smoke and grit and grime in the, you know, whatever's been used to dig out these roads might have involved steam power. We've learned. Steam power was quite heavy on the coal. You know, coal's being transported through a lot. Maybe it's coal dust. Maybe it just looks like it's got a bit of coal dust. But it certainly doesn't look old because you can see behind it, behind the fascia, it's a really standard roof with tiles, brick built. You know, those are really sort of normal shapes for modern construction. They're not so modern for antiquity. Not so like, it's not so much antiquity. She's completely wrong. She's making these really weird wrong assumptions, and she's smart enough to homeschool her children. So I worry for them.
Just be mud all over it, but I'd have to ask, why does it have mud all over it?
It doesn't have mud all over it. It doesn't have mud all over it. It clearly does not have mud all over it.
You should look at these buildings. They all look very old.
They all look very old? No, they don't. They all look very modern. What do you mean by old? They're not wood, they're brick for a start. They're multi-storey. They don't look old, do they? Where are you from? They've got roofs with tiles.
And you have to wonder.
I mean, they had roofs with tiles in the Roman times.
And also, look how many of them there are. And you see these huge piles of mud everywhere.
I've explained them. They're not piles of mud. They're piles of rock ready to put into the road because they're clearly doing that building. They might be building a canal. Who knows? But they're clearly the hardcore ready to used for the construction.
See these crumbled stones, and you just kind of see people standing around. And this is something else that you will see in a lot of these mud flood photos. I'm trying to see what this is here.
She thinks the whole place has been flooded with mud. Number one, where would the mud come from? Where would it come from? Number two, how would it flood down? It'd have to be transported by some large amount of water. Where has the mud come from? How has it flowed down? And why are we now using people as evidence for what you're saying? Because you said there weren't people, and now you're saying there are people. If there are people, they just stood around. I've told you for why.
I don't know. I thought maybe a horse and buggy. I'm not really sure.
It is a horse and cart, yeah.
A lot of the people, it just seems like they're just
don't
really...
dance away from it because you're scared of the evidence proving you wrong. That down there, it looks a bit like a horse and buggy. Yeah, it is. It looks like a horse and cart, doesn't it? It's on a road that they've constructed. It's on like a dugout road they've constructed. What?
I thought maybe a horse and buggy. I'm not really sure. But a lot of the people, it just seems like they're just standing around, not really sure of what to do. And that's just one example.
That's not true. We've proved, we can see them moving. They're on the road there, they're moving. They're busy in their daily life moving. These ones over by this building on the left, they're in movement because we can tell that one's got 3 legs, this one's got 3 heads, and they're in movement. They're doing whatever they're doing. And these small group here, there's actually some train tracks by where it says Gravekipper just under my face. Just where it says Gravekipper. You can see it's just the start of some train tracks there, aren't there? Wonder if this is the laying of the train tracks. Let's just move my great. You see that? There's some little tracks, little train tracks. It's obviously industrial.
That's probably the best example of a mud flood that I could see. So you can see that something happened that caused all this mud to come in, and you can...
So that's the best example of a mud flood, and it's not an example of a mud flood. We can categorically state anybody that works in construction. I can take this now. I can't because I can't print it out. I could go down to the local building site. In fact, I should. There's a building site up the road. I've got a camera. I should go and video the building site because it's just the same at the moment. It's just the same. They've dug out like where they're going to build the houses. They've started to build them. So they're going in the houses. But around them are all these piles of mud where they've dug out the foundations, where they've dug out the roads. And next to them are piles of hardcore and stuff because they're going to go in and make them. And at the end, it'll all look like normal life like you're used to. You're just not used to seeing it in construction. That's all.
You can see there are actually a lot of photos that actually will show you. Here's a good one. If you look at the bottom of these buildings. Now, first of all, it looks completely crooked, like it's slanted.
Right. This is difficult because I don't know the history of this building. It says Perth, Australia. Let's see if we can get Perth, Australia, sunken building. Let's see if we can find any buildings that are unintentionally sunken. See if we can find this one, you know. I'd like to know. You see, it's impossible for her to use this as evidence if she can't tell us where it is and what it is, because we could verify why it is. Is this it? One, two, 3 floors, and then that's got hexagonal. It's got 1, 2, 3. No, it's not the same building. It's not the same building, but that's a really good example, though, of how these cities are built and expand, isn't it? It's a really good example of that. That building was there first, and then the things in black and white were there, and then all this other stuff built up around it. And now there's loads of people, but before, there wouldn't have been any people. That even looks like it is sinking to the ground a little bit, that building. I've got a couple of off the top of my head explanations, but I'd like to be able to... There's a good example as well, isn't it? That one looks like it's sunk into the ground. Actually, it's the ground that's raised around it. Do you notice that? This is a good example. We've got a hill, and it's coming up. At the position we are taking the photo, we're at the top of the hill. And as it goes down the hill, you can see more of the bottom of the building. And at this point of the hill, it's almost like the building sunk into the hill a little bit. So it might be, and I don't know because I can't verify, but it might be that this photograph is on a wonk. and that actually the building is straight, and that the photograph has been taken on a wonk. You can certainly see on the far right where my face is, these poles. The very far right pole is not parallel with the frame. Yeah? So either the pole is wonky or the frame is wonky. Do you notice that? It's possible this photograph has been taken on a wonk. So it looks like the ground is straight, but actually it's a hill. That's possible. And if that were the case, then just like these other buildings, they build them into the hill. They take that into consideration. They dig out and around, they build it in. So the building is straight, but the ground outside is not. That may have been the case there. You know, I'm just playing detective. It may be the case that the building subsided. It might be that it's literally sunk. That happened with a lot of old buildings. It's happened. You've got subsidence. You know, it's happened. I don't know enough about where this is and what it is to be able to confirm nor deny that. I do know that it also looks like there's some sort of issue with perspective here. Perspective, because the building appears to be going off thinner to one side than it does on the other. It's longer on one side than it is on the other. But it looks a bit like it might be an optical illusion, this. I certainly can tell you, those half windows on the left-hand side there, that's the basement level, isn't it? That's the basement level. You're not getting anyone going in and out those doors. That's the basement level. And so if you follow it round and it leads round, the basement level is the basement level, even at the far right. It's almost like they've said this is the basement level, and then when they've gone round to that side, the basement seems to have come up out the... I think this photograph's on a wonk. That's my best guess. Perth, Australia here, just looking at this, doesn't appear to have been flooded with mud. It definitely doesn't appear to have been flooded with mud. All these buildings, all these other buildings, now surrounded by modern buildings, don't appear to have been flooded by mud. This is a great example because you can see there's a big building and you've got that issue with the cellar, with the basement level being uneven. But right next to it, this Factory 166, these little shops, they open out onto the street. So they're built at street level. So you've got two buildings next to each other that are clearly part of the same old, you know, older generation Perth, proving that you can build a building at street level, and right next door you can build a building that appears to be at street level for the front door, but then for the basement next to it is not. It's architecture. That looks similar. You can see again how the street rises on the left-hand side, so the building appears to get narrower. It's quite a common theme, isn't it, in Perth, for buildings to be built into hills. So my best guess here is the photograph is on a wonk.
And as you can see, it's surrounded by mud here. Now, a lot of times we will see these windows on the bottoms of buildings.
You can't see it surrounded by mud because, okay, the ground is slightly wet there. It's been raining maybe, or there's some water on the ground, but you can't see the colour or consistency of this ground. It could be sand. You can't tell that it's surrounded by mud. In fact, that's a strange thing to assume, because were it surrounded by mud, these people that don't exist that are walking towards the building, they'd get stuck in the mud, wouldn't they?
And we will think, oh, well, they put them there so that they could get some light into the house. What I've noticed, though, and I could be actually been, as we drive around, I always look closely at old houses and newer houses, and it only ever seems that the very old houses seem to have these half in, half out windows. And so you have to question, was it designed like that, or did the house used to be up higher?
She's saying she's driving around to see these features. So she's presumably driving around America, because I don't think she lives in Australia, does she? Maybe she does live in Australia. Maybe I'm wrong. Now we need to learn about half in, half out windows. My dad's got one of those on his house, half in, half out. It's an old house. It's an old terrace house. They used to build, tell you for why, because they wanted to get an extra layer. These days, the house I'm in, we haven't got a basement and a cellar. It's a more modern house. They don't bother building down. They build up instead. You can have 3 floors if you want. Back then, they used to dig down. They used to build these cellars, didn't they? They used to have more use for them as well, like cool storage and wine cellars and stuff. Light in the basement is why. Makes sense, doesn't it? Says Angie. It makes sense. It makes sense. Architecture. And I'll put history. Traditional windows, historic England. Look, this is England. I mean, I recognise these because this is England. You got them there on the picture that is just by my face. Got them there. We haven't had a mudslide in England. They just used to build things like that. They don't here, look, on these modern buildings. They don't there. I think it's just architecture over time, isn't it? I don't think it's... look, because there's buildings that were built at the same time. One's got them and one doesn't. So it proves, that photograph proves that it couldn't have been a mudslide. Like, it couldn't have been that there was a previous floor and the mudslides brought the level up, because the building next door wouldn't be like that then, would it? The building next door would also be... It doesn't make sense. Not to me.
And that was actually another level, because as you can see here, these aren't even level. They're kind of sloping downwards.
I've always wanted to get an online degree.
Oh, God. Get off with your awful adverts. Please stay away.
The land settling.
The land is settled, she suggests.
Piece of evidence that a lot of people believe shows that, yes, there were mud floods. There were mud flooded buildings. I will show you this one here. So this one, it basically looks like there were windows here.
Right, this is confusing for her, but it shouldn't be confusing to us. This is a fairly modern European building. I can't tell you where again. She hasn't told us where or what. But it's obvious what's happening here is they've dug away at that front part. Or this might be the back courtyard. We can't tell. But they've dug away at what would be ground level, because there's the door. That's where you're not going in up some big weird stairs, are you? That's the door. And the building next to it. They've dug away at the ground level. Obviously, they've dug down into what is now the basement. My dad's building's got a basement like that. They dig out a little bay window, so to speak, and then the light comes down and in. So you put windows in the basement, and you just don't put the floor all the way up to it. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? It's a little bay window for a basement. It makes sense, let the light in, yeah. And this is some sort of building or renovation work. I can't tell where ground floor is. Or maybe there were. Maybe there were just simply some... maybe that is ground floor, where the black thing is at the bottom. And maybe they just put some big steps up. You know, in America, you've got buildings like that, haven't you? I've seen them... I've definitely seen them in The Wire. And I'm not going to play this, you know, a lot. We'd spoil it with the copyright. But look, this is America. Now look, this is America. It's a sloping street. Like San Francisco. This is Baltimore, but it's a sloping street, so it gets taller at one end, and it's going up a hill. And you've got these steps in front of the houses, because not every house is on the same level. And it doesn't mean that where those steps go up to is floor level, does it? Those steps go up to the door. So floor level and the door are not the same. So I can see that on her video, look, you could have just removed the steps from this picture and boom, there's your picture. It doesn't prove a flood or a mudslide, does it?
So if they were putting these windows in here just to get some light into the basement, why would they have opened it up completely? This would have been underground.
And again, I can totally... let me show you some... I wonder if they've got them in Ball Street. I'm just going to try and find some houses that have got this exact feature. I used to live in Ball Street, you see, and I knew there was a house there that had it. This is a different street in Stratford, and this street might have it. And we'll do maps, eh? Let's do maps. I'll find it for you and I'll prove it. Just quickly. Can I do my little droppy? This is not Google Maps, is it? I'm on Ecosia for some reason. I get annoyed now with the internet some days. The chuff is is that? Don't recognise any. Oh, no, I do recognise it. All right, come on. Let's drop me off in West Street. Where's my little man with my little... There he is. It's a different street in Stratford-upon-Avon. This is a street in a town where I live, look. Now, look. You can see right here. It's kind of hard to show you because all the cars are in the way. This is a good example. Right there, there's a little fence and there's a little window box thing. That's the top of the window. And what it is it's dug out. There's another one there. You can see it looks like a little window box thing, a little frame. It's dug straight down. And in the underground, in the cellar, you've got a window that you can open. And then it opens to a wall. But above it is the opening to the sky. So that's what they've done there. They just dig out these little... Not every house has one, but... We'll definitely find some good examples. This house doesn't appear to have one. Yeah, this house has what you can see. Look, it drops down there. You can see that little window there and that little window there. And it drops down. So those little windows, you can actually open. They're below ground level. Dig it out and... there's another great example there. Look, that window is below ground level. You can see the bricks that cover it. If you were in that ground level, you'd open the window and at the bottom you'd see the bricks. Put it up and you can get to the sky. So that's just what's happening there. That's what's happening there. Question the narrative, reset mud flood. That's why they have those windows. If you know nothing about architecture, if you know nothing about history, if you know nothing about geology, oh, the wire is fire. Yes, the wire is fire. Omar come in. Omar come in. Oh, God, the wire is one of the most greatest things. Much better than this woman. This woman who... I have to keep playing the car music because she's getting me cross. Because she... let's bin off some of these. Because I've got too many windows open now. Too many windows. She's homeschooling her kids. She's homeschooling her kids. And she's teaching them this rubbish.
So this is why a lot of people are saying, no, these little windows that we see in the bottom of houses, that used to be up higher and it is now buried for what a lot of people believe could be a mud flood. And this looks to be an old door.
Okay, if that were the case, I could prove that were the case by simply digging out these things that are covered in mud, and there'd be fascia, wouldn't they? They wouldn't just be the raw concrete, would they? They'd have like front doors, paintings, house numbers, that sort of stuff that would have been covered by mud, and then you could be digging down and discovering it. They'd have been painted. They'd have been the front door. They'd have been the main front door of your house. Why you'd have a front door above it, I don't know. How the houses would have been engineered like that so that the second layer, or did they just build on top once things, I don't know, but
And you will find lots of photos like that too. Let me see if I can find the other one that I had up here. Let's see.
She's funny. She gets funnier. She'll say something funny in a minute. You wait.
Well, there's some more right here. That's not the one that I was looking for.
We talked about this, haven't we now? We've talked about this. This is so obvious. So obvious. When you do your big city construction, you live in America, you see this all the time in a big city. They're not going to knock down all the skyscrapers and buildings, but they do need to dig out to fix the subway or the this or the that. So they just dig the chuffer out. You can even see some construction vehicles down there in the pit. There's one there, a big lorry. So it's this photograph. You can see just there, can't you? How do I point that way? Just there, there's some little lorries, aren't there? You can see them, they're lorries. So we're at a time where we're driving lorries round with this is modern times. What is that proof? It's proving nothing. All it proves is that these buildings have got basements and foundations and we're digging out around them.
Though, I have so many photos here that... here we go. Now look at that. That looks like they built on top of an entire city.
You look at that and you think that they look like they're built on top of an entire city. That is America. Now, there are some places in Europe that have built on top of entire cities. The old Roman ruins sit underneath and become the foundations of the modern buildings. That actually happens. That actually happens. But not here. This is some old buildings that used to exist, have been knocked down. But they're not going to destroy all of it because you've got roads and other stuff there that they're built on with. That's all. This is the result of some deconstruction, not construction. This whole town, city is not built on top of an old... Like, you just need some basic education. Well, maybe that's just the frontages that are now in disrepair from some disaster. I can't exactly tell. I don't exactly know where it is. But I do know it's as modern as... Look at the cars. It's as modern as the 70s. So we're not talking mudslides. There were no mudslides in the 70s. And this is not evidence that it was built... Like, that stuff wasn't there... Oh my God, look, archaeological. We built on top of that. Where did that come from? Like, that was built... Like, it's all brick. It's all brick, isn't it? It's all brick with window frames and stuff. That was built post-1900. All of it. Come on, what more have you got?
What do we have here?
Homeschool me, baby.
There's another one. More mud flooded, built on top of another city.
It's not mud flooded, built on top of another city. I don't know where it is or what it is. It looks European. It actually looks Czech or Gothic enough. So let me just show you some places that look exact. I mean, this will blow your mind, won't it? This will blow your mind. If you go to Rome, look, there are places that appear to be built on some quite old stuff. Quite old rocks and stuff. And in the city, literally in Rome, you get these like places like this, which this is an archaeological site. This is an archaeological site where they've discovered these old ruins of Rome. And like I said, places are built on top of it now. You see how the ground level of what they've dug out and the ground level of what we live on now, there is like, 3 foot above. The old ruins of Rome have become the foundations for the new city. It is literally built on top of it. But in places, they leave it and reveal it. Leave it and reveal it. It doesn't mean that it was all slid in by mud. Doesn't mean it was all slid in by mud. But there is, over a long period of time, like 1,000 years, there is a movement of mud. I don't know how to quite explain. In fact, what I don't need to explain it to, I can ask, why is ancient Rome covered by modern Rome? Buildings rested on other buildings, roofs became foundations, as each layer of the city was successfully covered up, gradually morphing into the complex archaeological layer cake that is modern Rome. Ancient Rome was built around 7 hills. So it literally says they just built up and on top of and over and around. That makes sense, doesn't it? You know what New York's like when they build up and over and on top of and around? Why ancient Rome is buried. Not obviously going to be listening to anything to do with Grammarly. I should teach her kids, I should teach her kids.
And this is the short answer. Today's question is... Right,
that's what I thought. I was going to say over 1,000 years, mud movement, dust, dead plants and debris. It's all going to build up, isn't it?
Why is ancient Rome buried? As everyone knows, ancient Rome is deep underground. Take, for example, the Curia in the Forum, an ancient building converted into a church during late antiquity. By the Middle Ages, the ground level had risen so much that a new door had to be cut into the wall.
So this is going to be really confusing, right? Because we were talking all this time about a modern America built in the 1800s. Now she's taking us over to Rome, to Europe, to these other places, and they're not equal parallels, are they? This is clearly the case that this building was covered up to the chuffing eyes in mud. But it wasn't a mudslide that happened overnight.
10 feet, or 3 meters, above the original.
Yeah, look at 9/11 Memorial. 9/11 mud flood. Absolutely. You can still see the water flooding in there now.
The ground continued to rise, and during the Renaissance, another door had to be cut, this time more than 20 feet, or 6 meters, above the ancient pavement. The difference between ancient and later ground levels is equally obvious in the nearby temple of Antoninus and Faustina, where the door of the church that was built into the temple during the Renaissance is 2 stories above the ancient street.
Wow.
So where did all that soil come from? One humble but hard-working cause was wind-blown dust and weeds. In a temperate climate like Rome's,
Really interesting, because I was about to laugh then, because this is a modern image, isn't it? Very modern image. But what they're saying is, look, modern place, abandoned. Look how quickly the dust and the trees and the, debris, those trees aren't going to last. They're going to topple and fall and become more debris. Look how quickly it becomes, covered in debris.
plants take root on the roofs and walls of untended buildings. If you look at a modern building that's been abandoned for a couple decades, like Detroit's Packard plant, which is shown here, you can already see vegetation and even full-size trees sprouting from every surface. Before they were cleaned in the 19th century, Rome's ruins had similar rooftop forests, as this painting of the Colosseum illustrates.
We're lucky that we've got all these paintings and records of history, aren't we?
The soil produced...
It's almost as if you're going to homeschool your children. It's almost as if you would want to take some time to actually, learn about these things. Keep bringing up the music picture there, sorry. If you're going to homeschool your children, it's almost as if you want to learn about these things before you teach them rubbish, isn't it?
By the lives and deaths of these urban jungles, built up slowly but steadily, perhaps an inch or a couple centimeters every century. Plants, however, accounted for only a small fraction of the rise in Rome's street level. Until the Tiber embankments were constructed in the 19th century, Rome was prone to serious floods, which sometimes rose as high as 15 feet or...
So there actually were mudslides. There actually were floods. It seems normal and natural for us to understand the concept of flooding. The idea that the world changed, the rivers changed, that gut flood. Then we started to protect these places with embankments. Brilliant.
Or 5 meters above street level in the vicinity of the Pantheon. When the water receded, it often left thick layers of silt. Built-up trash also contributed to the rise of Rome's streets. Far and away the greatest culprit, however, was debris from ruined buildings.
That's irony, isn't it? The actual buildings themselves become the debris that builds up around them.
In a typical Roman apartment building, 3 or 4 stories tall.
And look what we're looking at here. This is a Roman apartment building. We're talking about something from the Roman times. So, again, this is this problem that Americans... Sorry if you're American and you're watching this, but... this is the problem that this lady has when she's starting her history at 1800. Because Rome was going on at 27 BC before Christ. If you remember, the Romans had all their stuff built when Jesus was around. Do you remember? Jesus and the Romans, and they crucified him, didn't they? Or the Jews were involved. Like Jesus was around with you remember the Romans were already there, weren't they? So they already had all this stuff built. So if you think, it's 1800 and it seems old, you're not going to be... This stuff's going to baffle you. Roman stuff, pre-Jesus. Look, they had buildings, full-on buildings. Not little mud huts or anything, full-on buildings. You don't believe that this stuff can be built in 1800. You're not going to believe this stuff can be built pre-Jesus, are you?
The outer walls were brick-faced concrete, and the roof was tile. But almost all the rest was wood. Once the building was abandoned, all that wood decayed. And once rain and frost weakened the mortar, and earthquakes brought the walls crashing down, there would be a grass-covered mound, a story or so tall, on the site of that apartment building.
So it's obvious, isn't it? There's a really good explanation there why some things are buried in time. Good. I'm glad that we've figured that out. I'm glad we can teach our children the right ideas.
And here's another one. I wish I could get it bigger, but I can't. It wouldn't let me save it and zoom in at all. But this also looks like some sort of other mud flood that happened. It looks here. You see all these huge, beautiful buildings.
So now we know that some of this could be the excavation and renovation of some of these buildings that have been covered over in time. But quite likely what we're looking at here again in the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s is industrial work. We're looking at people digging out and installing sewers, digging out and installing roads.
In the background, I wish I could zoom in because these look really pretty. And you've got all of this mud and, you know, stuff going on. Now, a lot of people say it could be construction and everything, which it very well could be. But my question is still, you know, what are they doing? Where is all that mud from? And it...
What do you mean? They've dug it up from there. From there. It's from there. And what are they doing? What do you mean your question is what are they doing? If that's your question, you should not be homeschooling. People who, like, there should be... I wouldn't be so mean on this person if she wasn't homeschooling, but there should be some sort of safeguard. If you're putting this information on the internet, your children should be taken away and made to go to school properly. Maybe that's a different debate. I'm being flippant there. It's a joke, but you know what I mean? It's your choice what you do with your children, I guess, but this seems like dangerous. It seems like you're proving yourself to be dangerous.
Doesn't explain away what I just showed you in those other photos of the windows. Okay. And now this is not particularly mud, but there are a lot of people who believe that some sort of catastrophe even happened, for example, at Petra. So this is at Petra, and...
Petra famously I think it's like, 600 or 800 years BC, and it's carved into the rock. So, Jordan... Oh, it's 7,000 BC. Sorry, I missed a naught off. I told you I'm not very good with my numbers. 7,000 BC. So she's not going to be able to get that into her head at all. 7,000 years before Jesus. They carved that out of the rock. And you can tell because you can see that it's carved out of the rock. And also, there are some buildings in Petra that are not finished, that are like in the process of being carved out of the rock. So you can see that they're carved out of the rock. All the evidence is there. There is no dispute. No one believes anything different.
They believe that this was not actually built into the rock itself, but that it was a building and that something happened that it ended up this way. I don't know if that's the case, but...
What, you think molten rock surrounded the building and solidified? Where did it come from? Why is it not magma? Why is the rock not volcanic? Who melted the rock? Why did they pour it all over the buildings? Why did the molten rock that was poured over the buildings not melt the buildings and in any way damage and, you know... Why does the rock not show any signs of heat? Great heat. Why isn't it it doesn't...
But it's certainly...
If you understood magma and rock, you'd know that couldn't possibly... You'd look at the rock and say, all right, this could not have been superheated and poured because look at the kind of rock it is.
Think about. And there's also another example that I have here of a castle. I believe it's in Slovenia. I think that's where it said this was. And if you look at this, it looks like the castle was built into the rock.
Yes. Because, and get this is going to blow your mind now. This is going to blow your mind. Get this. It looks like that. And it's not a big castle. It's not a castle. Where did you say it was? Slovenia. Let me show you a castle in Slovenia. Oh, it's just that one. They're calling it a castle as well. Fair enough. This is what I would consider a castle, though. A bit bigger. Maybe it's the same thing, just from a different angle. But you'll notice that this castle in Slovenia that I've picked out, this one, for example, you'll notice that it's built into the rock, almost up to the rock face. It's almost like on the pinnacle of the cliff. This is for safety, of course. People who build castles don't want you to be able to get into the castles. So they pick a safe spot, often a difficult to... Okay, this is Prajama Castle. Prajama Castle. 13th century castle built in cliff face cave. I mean, this shouldn't be difficult, should it? This is basic history again. And if you're failing at the history, you're failing to teach your children. This is the Pajama Castle, and it's built into a cave. Look. Renaissance castle built in the mouth of a cave in the idyllic village of Pajama. It was constructed in the Gothic style in the 13th century. So 13th century would have been 1400s. So again, it's too many years for her to get her head around it. It's considered to be one of the more significant architectural masterpieces of its time. To prevent easy access, the castle was built under a natural rocky arch. So it's deliberate. It's deliberate. There's no evidence on this website, but, you know, I'm assuming they have the evidence to state that it was built. And you can see why, look. If this is your approach to the castle, you're not going to be invading that castle very quickly anytime soon, are you? It's going to be hard to approach. You're going to be repelled. But look at all these people that are up on the side. They celebrate in the castle. Long history there that they celebrate. So they know about it. They've got no history of weird mudslides. When it's up in the top of a castle, the mudslide, what are you on about? How else would it have got there? How else? We're going to have to go back to... I'm confused now. What is she trying to say? It's not a mudslide theory, this one, is it?
And you've got this right here coming over the top of the roof. And it seems like an awfully hard way to build something.
That's why they did it.
Close to the rock. And again, some people believe that this is evidence that something happened. There is some reason that it's like this and that it was not originally built in this manner.
What do you mean? Some people say this is evidence. Is she suggesting that that chunk of rock face was removed and there were possibly other houses there and then this whole thing has disappeared? No, they've got a long historical tradition of knowing that it was built up there to be protective, to be out of the way. Nothing happened. Yes, some of this rock face has been eroded over time. Absolutely.
So now you know what I'm talking about when it comes to mud floods. Now it's just time to move on to Tartaria. So Tartaria, I talked about it in another video. We
don't know what you mean when it comes to mud floods. We're still in a bit in the dark, to be honest. But we know what this Tartaria is. We started our whole broadcast with this. Check if you're watching this, check back. It's an area of northern Asia that in the West we refer to as Tartaria. The Mongols, all sorts of different people have been under that banner over different periods of time because it's a moving line that we draw around northern Siberia, Asia. It also included parts of northern Canada and America from time to time. It's an area we call Tartar in the European.
A huge empire. Here it says Grand Tartary. And as you can see, it took up a lot of Asia.
But bear in mind, we're the ones writing these maps, these Western people. You can see this is a French map. So it doesn't mean they've been out there and they know everything about it and they've got everything accurate and right. It might be, suggestions and ideas. And it might be that because we drew that map with that line around it as an empire, Tartar, it might not mean that that area was a great big empire. Like, it might just be our perception of things and ways of explaining them.
Looks like it might have that time gone into Eastern Europe. I can't really tell from this map. And it covered parts of China. And so a lot of people believe that the Tartarian Empire didn't stop here, that it went worldwide. Now, I think
obviously it didn't. Obviously it didn't. We know that because below it is India. We've got record. We were there. We were in India. Below that is China. We were there. We've been to China. Opium trade. We know about, obviously, that's the Suez Canal there, isn't it? And that's Jordan and Syria, and we've got Africa. We were there. We've got history people. No one believed this was a global. It doesn't even suggest it on the map. It's just some random thing you've suggested, you madhead.
Tartaria, though, has become a name that a lot of people use just to describe the fact that there are a lot of these beautiful buildings that are very similar all around the world. And I did talk about this in another video too. There are a lot of beautiful buildings around the world.
Yeah, there are a lot of beautiful buildings around the world that are similar.
Like this. And they're very similar, and it almost seems as if there was some sort of civilization that was worldwide. Now,
did you hear her? Wait! I've got to do my big face. Did you hear her?
It almost seems as if there was some sort of civilization that was worldwide. Now, it almost seems
it really does.
In another video too, there are a lot of beautiful buildings around the world like this. And they're very similar, and it almost seems as if there was some sort of civilization that was worldwide. Now, I know that
yeah, it does seem like there was a civilization that was worldwide. Us! The human civilization! We were worldwide! We were there building these buildings! The colonial British that built things in America were colonial British! We had been worldwide! The British Empire, for Christ's sake! We went to India, we went to Australia, there was a global empire building buildings, and the reason you see them all in this similar construction style is because we had a similar style. You go through these fashion phases in architecture, and it doesn't matter if you're an Australian architect or if you're an architect in New Zealand. You know what's going on in the world of architecture because you've got the world news these days. You've got newspapers and you've got like people, you know, showing you photographs, the Georgian style, the Edwardian pillars. Of course these things were happening. No one is disputing that. No one is disputing that. I've broken my big face. I've broken my big face. We're now going to have to switch to the backup camera. We're now going to have to switch to the backup camera because my rant then did the battery in, and I'm not changing the battery. I'm finishing soon. We just switched to the backup camera.
Talked about British colonialism, and that's why all the buildings look the same. But that doesn't explain it in all areas. For example, in Japan was never colonized by the British, and yet they also have the same sorts of buildings there.
I just explained it. Style. And Japan doesn't have the same sort of buildings as the colonial British. But when techniques and styles were... What are you on? Japanese buildings have their own style, look. They're very different. Get off. You're a worst kind of idiot. Now making assertions that just blatantly are obviously not true.
So a lot of people just started.
And if you found one or two British style buildings out in Japan, get this will blow your mind. We went there. Japanese people were influenced by us. That's why you talk English, you chuffer.
To kind of give this the generic name of Tartaria, because Tartaria...
There you go, look. Luke knows. Japan doesn't have the same styles. Some buildings were made by Dutch settlers in the 1800s. That's it as well. It wasn't just Britain, was it? It was other countries and cultures. Dutch settlers in the 1800s, before the Edo period. Luke actually knows more than this woman. He hasn't bothered to make a video to try and tell everyone because he didn't think it was necessary, because until this woman started spouting this nonsense, it wasn't. It's all just like, you know, history. She's changing the world in a weird way for her children.
That seems to have been covered up for one reason or another. It seems that they were very advanced. They had beautiful architecture. They also had a pretty high technology for that.
That's us. That's humans. We're advanced. We've got the technology and the architecture. That's how we built those fucking buildings. Sorry for swearing. But, there's all horses and carts out there. So you know about the time and, you know, what we said earlier. Slaves, deaths, manual labour. I mean, people dispute the pyramids. I don't know where that sound came from then. People dispute the pyramids, don't they? But come on, come on. This isn't the pyramids here. We've got photographs of people building these things. They're marked in graves.
And so a lot of people just kind of give the blanket name of Tartaria to any civilization that built in this beautiful manner that we really don't understand what happened to the actual inhabitants of it. So
you say the people that built that, you don't understand what happened to them? Are you nuts? They're all recorded. I guarantee you, I don't know what that building is and I don't know where it is, but I'll guarantee you the architects, a number of the builders, the people that used the building would have been recorded in history. They'd have been on census forms, their marriage licenses, their deaths. They're recorded. That's in modern history. They've got horses and carts and, cobbled streets. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous to say we don't know who built them and how and where they've gone.
A lot of times if we're saying Tartaria, we might not be meaning the actual...
I mean, that's beautiful, isn't it? Carved marble, I imagine. Looks like it might be European. Or it could be South American. Definitely explainable, though.
It's from the World's Fair, but it's still based on...
Oh, it's from the World's Fair, so that's in America. modern America.
Tartarian architecture.
It's based on old architecture. So now she's proved that you can build something, but you don't have to be a Tartarian. You can just make it look like it. So doesn't that like invalidate her previous argument about other places where she said how could they possibly have, like in Japan they couldn't possibly, well they could have just copied them. You did there, that one was. That's evidence of it.
But when we say Tartarian architecture, we're just referring to the extravagant building style.
Right, so she's confused because that's not how that works. That's not how that works. Architectural styles over time, timeline. You'll notice it's not that, oh, because it's elaborate. Like, she's got really confused now. Again, I'm not being mean to Americans, but this particular woman and her brain and what she's doing, she doesn't understand the world properly. Because in her world, buildings are very much of a certain style. Everything 1800s onwards, modern stuff, is not like the old stuff. All the old stuff is the same in her mind. All the old stuff, that's the same. It's not, that's a conglomeration of different styles, that one. I can tell already it's like got some Gothic in the statues, but it's also got the pillars taper at the top. So they might be Greco-Roman pillars, Greco or Roman. And then the building with the architecture and the Gothic, again, on the roof. You know, there's different architectural styles thrown in together there. And if you look at a timeline of architectural styles, which I'm not going to, you know, dig too deeply into here, because I can't get the chuffing thing in a big picture. Open image in a new tab, please. That's as big as I can get it. But you can see the evolution of these different styles from pyramids. Often it's about pillars. We've got classical, we've got Romanesque, we've got Renaissance, Baroque, Rococo, American Colonial is where we come in there in the 1800s. Neo-Gothic, Beaux Arts, Neo-Art Deco. You know, we've got all these different styles. American Colonial, Baroque, Renaissance, Gothic I mentioned, didn't I? Classical. And of course, in modern buildings, they mix and match all sorts of different styles. You've got modern skyscrapers where my face is now covering it. Let me just shift you on the browser so you can see it. On the browser, you've got, look, a skyscraper there, but with Art Deco styling. So, you know, you can have it all. You can have it all. The world's your oyster. So I'm glad I've managed to solve that confusion for you.
We might not be talking specifically of the empire that was over in Asia. So it's important to point that out as well. So anyway, you're going to be hearing...
Life must be really confusing for this woman, mustn't it? Life must be really confusing. How does she, like... No wonder people get anti-vax and, like, think that 5G's coming to fry their brain. No wonder they get funny ideas, because if you're not capable of understanding the world as was, as laid out in the books, history books, schooling, everything, if you're not capable of that, of the basics, you know, putting 2 and 2 together and making 4, you're off, you're away, you're gone, you're off, you're away, you're gone. You're lost, aren't you? Must be tough for her. I feel worried for her.
Probably quite a bit from me about resets, mud floods, and Tartaria, and I just thought that it was really important that I explain to you what I'm talking about.
So she's got more videos on it. Obviously, we're going to come back to Tartaria and do a lot of this. This seems fun. There's no place like home. She's got 40,000 subs. That's got 60,000 views. I've got no subs. I've got 40, 50. I really count on you, my loyal subs. I really count on you to help me get bigger than her. I need to be bigger than her. Come on, it's not fair, is it? How can she be bigger than me on the internet? That's not right. That's not right. Let's have a look at what she says about homeschool before we finish today.
30 seconds to save your cat's life.
That's giving me epilepsy, you chopper. I'll tell you a story about epilepsy. Hang on. I'll tell you, before this will invalidate everything I've said now. You'll think I'm an idiot. This is my sort of backup web camera here. This will invalidate everything I've said. You'll think I'm an idiot. So once upon a time, let me just check that everything is still working, and we are... Invalidate everything else. Yeah, okay. So once upon a time, I went to a rave. I'll have you know. I went to Junction 21. Junction 21 alternate. I mean, it wasn't the first rave I've been to. I've been to chuffing loads of them. alternate. I'm just wondering if I'll be able to get it on the pictures and images now. We're browsing. This is Alternate, and Junction 21 was a club in Leicester, and this is Alternate. Right, Alternate are like heroes of mine. Right, well, it was mad. So many cool things happened at this gig. Alternate, look at them. They're there. They're wearing the masks. You can't tell who they are, but there's a group of there's like 5 or 6 of them there, aren't there? Look, and at this rave, Alternate with a big draw, the event, the gig that we're going to see. After or during, I can't remember because my brain's so fried, but during the rave, there were 4 or 5, 6 people sat at the back of the rave, all in the same matching Adidas tracksuits. And they're all sat there, all very sweaty, after Alternate had played, all very sweaty, hanging out, sat down. And I was like, you're Alternate, aren't you? And like, no, we're not. And I'm like, yes, you are, because they were a little bit older than me, a little bit more grown up. I was like, yes, you are, you're Alternate. And they were like, no, we're not. And eventually I said it enough times, they said, okay, we are. And I knew you were, I know you were. That's why you're all dressed the same. Because you wear masks on stage so no one can see who you are. But I know it's you. And I was talking to them for hours. They told me they weren't. They might not have been Alternate. They might not have been. At this very same rave, Alternate put on a light, a strobe light, a big blue, it was about this big blue pulsing strobe light at the front. The biggest strobe light I've ever... They brought their own lights to the gig. Biggest strobe I've ever seen. And I was there, and I was a little bit... I won't tell you what I've been doing, but I was a little bit out of it. A little bit out of it. And this pulsing strobe light literally gave me seizures. It made me feel... I remember the feeling of it made me feel like I was going back into my own head. And then I was like that. I was literally falling over and then surging awake. And it was like a seizure. It was like I was falling into a seizure and snapping out of it. Because this great big blue strobe light. Don't know what that's got to do with anything now. I've forgotten what I was talking about now. Literally forgotten. That's a good story though, isn't it? Good story about... Oh, she was going to give me she was strobing my... The advert was strobing me, wasn't it? Okay. Let's find out about seasonal homeschool then. And I'm not going to be mean to the lady, but I worry about her children. Because, God, this is the first introduction. I've only seen her video. Now I'm getting introduced to her as a person. Let's have a look.
Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. Today I thought that I would give you an update on our seasonal homeschool, which I made a video about 5 months ago. So
Shelly seems quite nice, doesn't she? She doesn't seem like, if you met her in the street, you ever walking around, you'd see she seems normal. She seems a little bit... I'm not being mean to her. Okay, I'm not being mean to her, but I can see that she's quite pale. That might be natural skin tone, but also just around here and around the neck, and around the shoulders and henchness of her. She might be a little bit overweight. That's not good health, is it? That's not good health. But I'm not trying to be mean to her or anything. I'm just saying what I see here. Just sort of saying. She also might be a Karen. She was going at you. Might be like, oh, you're a Karen. Depends how she comes across, doesn't it? But she's already come across to me as being a little bit ignorant and a little bit naive, and not capable of keeping herself mentally or physically that well. Maybe I don't know.
Our homeschool year, we have completed 18 weeks, and I just wanted to share with you what I've learned about what our new homeschooling style is.
Because schooling and education are two different things. Are they? I mean, we don't say schooling in the UK. We just don't have the word. Education received at school. So they're the same thing. Schooling is defined by the word education. Schooling, the Free Dictionary, education, especially when received at school. The process of teaching or being taught in a school. The training of an animal, an archaic word for reprimand. Instruction in school. So it's specifically about being in school, isn't it? It kind of refers to school, but it also did say derived. This one says experience derived from experience. Now, it doesn't have to be in a school, but it could be in a school. Education through a school setting is what it's trying to say. So because schooling and education are two different things. Because you can be educated outside of school, I'm assuming she means. But schooling and education are not implicitly Like they're in the same area, aren't they? They are in the same area. Looking over there at you, you're up there now.
If you haven't seen my video about our seasonal homeschool routine for this year, I will leave a link for it in the description box because I'm not going to get into detail about what it is. I really just wanted to give you an update on how it's been going for us. So in a nutshell, our seasonal homeschool is simply that we are using 3 different homeschooling styles, each one for a 12-week period.
That will be confusing, won't it?
So 12 weeks of an almost unschooling approach, and then 12 weeks of what I call foundational homeschooling, and then another 12 weeks of unit studies or a more Charlotte Mason style.
That leaves, and I'm not the best schooled, am I? But 3 12s are going to be 36, aren't they? And you've got 52 weeks. So there's still a few weeks left in the year. I suppose you just have them off.
So far, we have completed 18 weeks, as I mentioned.
Is it a skin tone is like painted on? I'm not an expert in makeup, but is it that her skin tone is painted on very pale? It looks unhealthy to me, her complexion. I don't know, is it matte effect from makeup? I'm not trying to be rude. Honestly, I'm not trying to be rude.
Mentioned in the intro. And we've done 6 weeks of the almost unschooling routine and then 12 weeks of the foundational homeschooling. Since we start our homeschool year, our new homeschool year, the 2nd week of July every year, I thought that it would be best to do an almost unschooling approach. Unschooling, if you aren't familiar with it, is just basically living as if school didn't exist. And
got news for you, love. If you're homeschooling, you're living as if school didn't exist, because you're doing it. It's a very rough thing to say, that is, isn't it? Looks like Eddie Izzard. That's it. It does, doesn't it? It looks like I'm not trying to be rude about it, but it looks, there's something quite I feel like if I rub my finger down her face, it's going to come off with all stuff on my finger. I don't know if I'm being rude here.
Summertime in my area where I live is really the perfect time to do this. We have so many trails, we have so many bike paths, canals.
Trails, bike paths and canals are positive. There are good things there, but they're not going to teach you about antiquity and geology. I mean, you can find examples of geology on the path, but if you don't understand geology yourself, you're not going to be able to impart that knowledge to a young person on the path. On top of that, the classroom lessons, the reason we school in classrooms is not just a hand-me-down from ye olde worldy, which you don't think exists, but it's because it kind of works. Like, we've got scientific studies and we've got ways of measuring the way that children understand information, and it turns out that some children are audio learners, some children are visual learners, some children are kinesthetic learners. They learn by doing things, and a classroom environment has all of these different aspects. You've got the blackboard, the teacher talking, and the worksheets and the things you do together. It's also important to socialise while you're at school and to do things together and to learn what other people are learning. I know that sounds silly, but other people might be learning not true facts and you might be learning the real truth. But if you're not aware of what everyone else in society thinks and the way they think it, you're not engaging or able to engage with society on their level. And that is difficult for people. I mean, for example, I went to a grammar school, so I didn't have exactly the same schooling as the general society. And it seems quite rude of me to be like, oh, I had something different. I'm saying different. I'm not saying better. I'm not saying better, I'm saying different. But in other ways, we were much more pushed to be academically successful at my school than you would have been if you went to a comprehensive school. So that is just a fact, and that's what happened to me. But, not being in any sort of educational environment, I feel instinctively might be detrimental.
It's just a really beautiful place to live. So I thought to myself, why have the kids start out their school year, and just have to do stuff inside all the time? No, let's take advantage of that, and we can spend a lot of time doing nature study.
Again, the reason why you might want the children to be in a school environment and not just outside all the time is because you want a balance. You want them to be outside some of the time to learn about these nature things and the world, but you also want to be in a school setting where they can concentrate, where it's air conditioned, where they've got papers and pens and blackboards and, computers. You're not going to be able to learn to code a computer in a field, are you? You're not going to be able to understand how science, you're not going to be able to do certain aspects of, I remember certain aspects of our science experiments had to be done in a lab because they were like lab experiments and things. Like, you're not going to get a fundamental grasp of electricity and stuff out riding your bike. So really, for our almost unschooling, so for our first 6 weeks of school,
all we really did was Bible. We start our school day with that every single day, no matter what.
That's handy. Bible. So you're getting a lot of Bible.
So they did Bible. They had to do silent reading, a little math.
That must be nice, mustn't it, in the morning, if you force your children to silently read. I thought this was all about going outside and that. Silent reading. I don't know what I'm not that informed on the educational aspects of silent reading, but I understand that when you're trying to teach a child to read and help them, it's important that they verbalise the reading, because then you know that they're actually reading it. Do you remember in class when they used to say, you read, and now you start, and you have to follow what's going on, because otherwise if you don't start reading out loud when they say it's your turn, you've chuffed it up.
Workbook,
you remember that
that's kind of like drills, and then everything else was just self-directed learning. But as I mentioned, a lot of times that really did include all of us going out as a family and just exploring our town.
There's a problem with self-directed learning in that you can't teach yourself what you don't know, and she can't teach you what she doesn't know. So just going exploring in the town and wandering around, it sounds completely irresponsible. It sounds like she wants to go shopping and doesn't want to have to bother dealing with her children. I mean, she's probably better off just dropping them off at school, because then she could do what she wants.
Exploring the nature around us, checking out the mountainsides,
As we discussed, America only being around since the 1800s, doesn't matter how many shops you walk around, doesn't matter how many times you go to the mall, you're not going to find examples of ancient antiquity in order to bring up teaching moments.
Creek. And so our almost unschooling approach was phenomenal. I really had a good time with my children doing that.
She had a good time.
Children had a really good time with that.
Education's not measured in whether you're having a good time.
And I have no complaints about that at all.
She's got no complaints. I have a few. Maybe her children will when they grow up and realise they don't understand things like maths and biology in the same way as their peers.
So now we have actually finished 12 weeks of foundational homeschooling, because I'm going to reserve the other 6 weeks of almost unschooling for the end of our homeschool year, when it is warmer out again. It's too cold right now to really enjoy a lot of that stuff.
Well, that's ridiculous, because if you're going to be learning about the seasons and the world, you do need to go out in the cold as well. It's not just weather dependent. It's not just if it's sunny you go to the beach and learn, and if it's cold I don't learn anything about the outdoors. I don't know anything about the world of cold. Anything below a certain temperature is beyond my... If we're going to do a quiz and you're going to ask me questions, don't ask me anything about the Antarctic. It's just too cold for me to learn about.
So we have completed 12 weeks of our foundational homeschooling. And foundational homeschooling is really basically the basics. Everything that is most important that you need to know, so that you can teach your children to know how to go about and get information on their own. So what that is reading, writing, and arithmetic.
No. The basics about it's not just about whether you can read and write and do maths. The basics of critical thinking, the objective analysis and evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment, the basics of critical thinking, that's an actual skill that you can teach somebody, but you need to be able to understand facts, to be able to verify things, to be able to understand whether things, so I'm looking over there at you and you're up there, whether things are valid. It's a lot about what we've been doing today. This is her problem, isn't it? This is her problem. She doesn't have that skill, so she can't tell you whether there's a mudslide or not, because she can't evaluate it through critical thinking. She doesn't understand logic and rationality. She doesn't understand deduction, abduction, induction. If you don't understand these things, arguments, deductive, inductive, whether things are sound, you don't know, never heard of Occam's razor. If you don't understand these things, then it's going to be hard for you to teach them. Look at it all. That's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, is it? Look at it all. That's just the Wikipedia. That's just the outline. If you don't know who Socrates was and why he was asking people if they believed in justice and what justice is, if you don't understand these, how are you going to... you're showing yourself to be ignorant here.
So it has been Bible and read aloud, spelling, and they have done a language arts workbook and a math. Well, we use CTC math, so they've done a CTC. So
we've done counting. I don't know how young they are. I don't know whether it's just primary school, but I do remember in primary school I covered history. She didn't mention history. I covered biology. She didn't mention biology. Chemistry, definitely did some of that. Physics, she hasn't mentioned physics. What about other aspects of our world, like astronomy? What about she's just missing out huge parts. When you have a curriculum in a school, when it's provided to you by the government. Okay, there are some issues because we're learning what we're learning what the government wants us to learn. So it might be that we're getting taught some funny ideas. It's not really that. It's that my little individual me, clever old me, I don't know all the subjects. I don't know, but a group of people all putting their minds together can give me a really good broad ranging coverage of all these different subjects, give me a really good education. That's what I received. I was very lucky to receive it, and it's on the back of a lot of study, a lot of thinking, a lot of ideas. No one teacher put together the curriculum, but they all benefit from having it provided to them in easy to provide breakdown. Once a week we're going to be doing this, and it adds up to this. The curriculum. Yeah, I mean, it's been around since Roman times.
Math.com website.
But she doesn't have one.
Every day. And so what I have learned after 12 weeks of this is that although it sounds great in theory...
No, it doesn't sound great in theory. It sounds awful in theory. And it also sounds like your children are beholden to you to educate them. And what if you have a bad day, or you're feeling angry, or you've got personal vendettas going on with their behaviour? Teachers don't have that. I mean, we all worry, we all feel bad. But do you remember a teacher who felt they were personally being critical of you? They were right chuffer, because they shouldn't be personally critical of you. It's not about being personal and rude. It's about being my teacher. Do you know what I'm saying? There's a difference in role. So if you're not fulfilling the role of a teacher properly because you don't even understand what it is, you're having to be a mother. Just be a mother. Just be a good mother. Just love them. Don't fill their heads full of nonsense and try and usurp the teaching community who might know better because they might have studied teaching and done a degree. Just do what do what comes natural. Stop with all the madness, please. You're making your lives worse.
When you are doing nothing but spelling and language arts workbook and math every single day, it becomes very monotonous, and it really becomes hard to look forward to the homeschooling day.
That's another reason why you want to look for teachers to teach your children, is because they understand how to make a lesson enjoyable, and they're looking into it. It's a constant thing that they struggle with. On top of that, some lessons are not enjoyable. Some are just not, but you have to do them. But she's just described a process where she's not got enough different subjects to vary the day. She's not got enough knowledge herself to be able to bring out these teaching moments all through. I thought they were out playing on their bikes, mate. No, they're drudging through the maths book every day and they hate it now. She seems confused.
At first it was fun because we hadn't done any structured learning like that, for the summer. So at first it was okay. But then after a while, it just started to get really old because we had no variety.
And she's saying it started to get old. Does she mean she's bored, or does she mean the children are bored? It's okay for the children to get a little bit bored. Push them for 20 minutes, give them a little break. Push them for 20 minutes, give them a little break. That's okay. But if you're bored because you're just, bored of maybe you're not a good maths teacher. Maybe let them spend some time with the maths teacher who enjoys mathematics, who sees it as something to... sees it as something to be enthused about, because some people are
in our routine, and we were always very...
It sounds like you're not a very good teacher. You describing being bored of teaching and bored of the lessons, you're going to blame it on the book or the curriculum or the this or that. Sounds like you're not a very good teacher.
Very used to having a variety in our routine. So at this point in time, I am still I'm going to continue using a seasonal homeschool. But what I do know is that for next year, for our next homeschool year, when it comes to the foundational rotation, I think that I'm going to alternate and maybe throw in something else with it. So maybe alternate days of one day of foundational learning.
Literally just making it up as she goes along. Oh, it didn't go so well this year. We'll do it a bit differently next year. By the time you've grown up, by the time you've done your formative years, your first 5 years, she's had several different ideas, hasn't really got to the grips with what makes a good education. You're already grown up and you've been miseducated. You've failed. You've passed. Your chance is gone. You're going to have to go and get adult education if you want to learn the basics, because she's failed you. What a sad state of affairs.
And another day of, say, Charlotte Mason, or maybe the next day could be fun schooling books, the Thinking Tree fun schooling books. I haven't really decided yet because we're done with this rotation now anyway. But that is really what I have learned, is that now for some families that might work to do, a language arts workbook. And I
just want to say I feel bad because I criticised her physical appearance just because it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I feel bad. Everyone looks how they look. I'm really, sorry for saying that, actually. I feel bad about criticising someone's physical appearance when it's so obvious you can criticise all the things she's saying instead.
And math and spelling every day and not really throw in any kind of variety. But for us, I have so many different children and they have so many different learning styles.
She keeps mentioning these same things as well, math and spelling, and she doesn't know what the things she doesn't know. You know, the unknowns in life, the things you don't know what they are. So she can't even begin to say what she's missing out on. Spelling, punctuation and grammar is one form of English language. English language can be split into different subjects, English language and English literature. There's the language, the super-segmental features of spoken English that we learn and develop over time. You'd need to learn about childhood development for that. You might know a bit because you've had children. Then on top of that, we've got the history of the language, haven't we? How the language changed over the years. You need to know what a past participle is, and you need to know them from your principles. Well, I've invented a word there. You know, you need to know the difference between hypothetical and empathetical. You need to know the language deep. I had a really good teacher for that. They were different from my English literature teacher, because my English literature teacher didn't know all that sort of stuff about childhood development. Maybe they knew some of it, but they were much more interested and informed about the history of literature. And if you ask them about Ulysses, or if you ask them about Harry Potter, they've got a good answer for you, and they could analyse it and take it. She's not got that wide range of knowledge. She's not got it. I don't have it. I'm not a biology teacher and a physics teacher and a maths teacher and an economics teacher and a sociology teacher and a technology teacher, an IT technology teacher. I'm not a music teacher. Look at all these variety of subjects that she's not an expert on any of them. She's not even an expert on the basics of teaching. She hasn't got it down. She hasn't decided on how she wants to do the year yet. She's just making it up as she goes along. That's ruining her children.
And they're really very artistic children anyway. So, just sitting down and doing that kind of sit-down learning every day for 12 weeks wasn't fun for any of us.
That's a bit unfair. If you're artistic now, you don't like maths. Well, that's ridiculous. You can be artistic and you can be good at sitting down and learning. And the fact that she's using the self-fulfilling prophecy to label her children at this early stage is a failure for her. That's a really dangerous thing for her to do. The self-fulfilling prophecy. She won't understand this because she won't have studied sociology, so she won't know about this. This is one of the things that she's unaware that she's implanting in her children. I don't want your things to consent for. Thank you. I've been on this website before, so it should just let me go in. Self-fulfilling prophecy, chuff off, is a belief or expectation that an individual holds about a future event that manifests. It becomes real because the individual holds the idea. I'm not very good at throwing. Oh, is it throwing competition today? But I'm not very good at throwing. I just told myself that. Time to do throwing practice. I'm not very good. And you don't put as much effort in, and you throw back, and then you say to yourself, well, look, it's going badly because I'm not very good at it. I self-fulfilled my own prophecy. I'm good at throwing. It's throwing day today. Oh, good. I'm looking forward to it because I'm good at throwing. My mom's always been telling me what a good thrower I am. Give me the ball. I'll throw it. I'll have a good go. I'll feel good about it, and I'll do it better. That's the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe in something, it can come true simply because of your belief, not because you manifest it in the world like some kind of magic. It's not that we've got a self-fulfilling prophecy like it's not the idea, the laws of attraction. It's not that. This is something that was studied by sociologists, and they wrote papers on in university. Was it Milgram? Was it or Robert Merton? Robert Merton. There's the man. He wrote the papers. Harvard, education. Brilliant. That's what that is. She doesn't know about it to the point where she's going to use it to the detriment of her children. She's ignorant of the fact she just gave them a label which is going to make those children believe they're not that good at maths and stuff. They're better at other things because she's not very good at teaching maths.
So that is something that we're definitely going to change up. So now we are actually on a 6-week break because we take it from Thanksgiving.
And if your children are not very good at maths and they're struggling with it and they're better at the artistic things, it might be better to find a different way to teach them maths rather than ignore it completely and let them paint more pictures.
Week through New Year's Day. And the reason that we're taking 6 weeks is because we do what's called the Sabbath schedule. So what that means is that we homeschool for 6 weeks on, and then we take a 1-week break. 6 weeks on, and then we take a 1-week break. Then we take 6 weeks from Thanksgiving. That's
got nothing to do with the Sabbath, which is a day of the week, not a period of annual 6. Is there a word for a 6-week unit? Oh, what a strange thing.
Like I just mentioned. And then another 6-week break from like the end of spring to
she likes the breaks.
The second week of July, which is when we start back up again. So after New Year's, when we start back up, we are going to be doing the unit study rotation. And if you don't know what a unit study is, I will leave some videos in the description box about that as well, because at this point in time, I'm not going to really talk about what unit studies are.
She doesn't know.
I'm just going to assume that you do know what they are.
Or she does, and she isn't going to tell us. But I feel like she doesn't know, and she's going to find out herself in a bit.
What I have learned, though, is that I don't know if I'm going to do unit studies every single day. I might decide to do maybe alternate, like I'm going to with foundational learning, maybe throw in something different. So
she's making up. These things don't work if you just randomly choose a bit here and a bit there. If you're going to do a unit study, if you're going to do that style of education, do it. Don't do it for a little bit and then stop it and then do a different bit, because the people in the education system, your children, are not going to benefit from anything. They're going to get the worst of all worlds rather than the best of both.
So I might alternate unit study day with fun schooling. Unit study day, fun schooling. Something that I'm really going to have to think about and pray about over our vacation. Nothing is really set in stone when it comes.
It's weird, isn't it? God didn't tell you how to educate your children in the Bible.
Comes to that, but when you're homeschooling, nothing should be set in stone anyway. You have to be flexible. That's the most important thing to remember, is to be flexible, because you never know what is going to happen. I can assure you of that, because the last few months for me have been crazy.
So what she's saying is it's difficult to homeschool your children because your life gets in the way. That's why children are better off at school, because the teachers don't say, oh, my life's crazy, you're not getting taught this week, I'm going to go to the shops. You know, it's not that. It's not that your life gets in the way of their education. That's not what happens at school. They come first.
Which really has led to me having a lot less videos than I used to do. I'm hoping that at some point I'm able to start increasing the volume of my videos.
These days we don't worry too much about less and fewer and greater and that. But actually it's correct to say less and more is of a quantity. So I've got less. I would have fewer videos is the correct way to say that. But she wouldn't know that because she's not that educated.
Again. But yeah, the craziness has set into my life, and I've just learned to accept it as, you know, a season. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up.
I don't. I'm very disturbed by this. The whole concept, I worry about your children. I worry about your children. I worry about your desire to present this strange story of mudslides and what do we say about Tartaria? It's a loop show, isn't it? A loop-de-loop show. So now I'm going to go and walk my doggy. I'm glad I've done some good work today. Honestly, this is good work that I've done, because you've got to be careful, and you've got to be careful about what happens to the children. You've got to care for children. I worry about someone's children because they're in danger. They're going to come out of this underprivileged in ways. I worry about that. It's sad. And this rubbish that's been perpetuated throughout the internet, rubbish. It's just a bit of a laugh for us, really, isn't it? Bit of a laugh. So I hope you've had fun today. I hope I haven't been too mean. I'm not trying to be mean directly to that woman personally. As I said, I'm sure we could have nice conversations. I'm sure she's quite a nice person. If she believes in all that Jesus stuff, then she's certainly going to be nice to me and not say anything mean to me, because she's going to turn the other cheek and love thy neighbour. She's not going to be angry about what I've said, because she's going to turn the other cheek and love thy neighbour. So, and I'm good with that, because I believe in Isha as a great miracle working prophet. So I'm happy with that. We're going to find out who wrote the Bible in coming episodes. I wonder if she knows. I'd love to get her on, have a conversation with her. I'd love to become friends with her. I'm not mean about people. I said mean things about her physical appearance because it was a shock to me. So I'm sorry about that. I take that back. I didn't go on about the boogers up her nose, did I? Right, so you be good, my little puckos. I've got to go and walk around in the woods now. Maybe I'll learn something while I'm out there.